Chapter 1084. Thousand Bird Realm, Outer Space. Sun, who had joined the Shunhun sect, was on a meteor trying to persuade the primal Chaos Kuan to go to Thousand Bird Realm. However, the skinny old man who had transformed into a human turned a deaf ear to it. He only smiled and played dumb. He was unwilling to step into the Thousand Birds world. Sun knew how fierce and powerful the primal Chaos Kuan was. Even if he couldn't persuade it, he didn't dare to leave. He stayed by the old man's side and watched his actions. Thousand Bird Realm is getting cold. The skinny old man, who was curled up in a recliner and lazily glanced at Thousand Bird Realm from time to time, suddenly said such a sentence. Sun knew that every word he said had a deep meaning, so he sensed it inwardly. The soul will that originated from him spread to the nearby starry sea, causing a strange storm that washed away all of the tainted energy. A moment later, Sun's expression changed. He keenly sensed that the tainted energy and most of the extremely cold aura were being pulled by Thousand Bird Realm from all over the Annihilation starfield. At this time, he naturally remembered a piece of news he had received not long ago. The extremely cold world in one of the 7 cold abyss entrances in the Annihilation starfield had changed. There was no longer any cold energy gathering towards that place. Back then, the reason why they had chosen the Annihilation starfield to create the cold abyss entrance was because, after careful screening, they had confirmed that this starfield had more cold energy than other starfields. Therefore, there was an extremely cold world that turned into the cold abyss entrance. Now, the cold abyss entrance in the Annihilation starfield had an unknown accident, and the vast cold energy in this starfield had begun to gather towards Thousand Bird Realm. Sun naturally knew that something was wrong. "Don't look at me. It has nothing to do with me." The skinny old man grinned and chuckled. Sun, oh Sun, you should know a little about me. I have always harbored a grudge against the 5 great factions and that demonic phoenix from the Goblin Temple. For the time being, I don't have any ill intentions towards the Shunhun sect and the Chamber of Commerce. Also, tampering with the flow of cold energy is not my area of expertise. He leaned back and slowly closed his eyes, no longer looking at Thousand Bird Realm. You don't have to guard me. First of all, you can't do anything to me if you stay. Secondly, I will not act rashly before the situation is clear. So Sun, hurry up and go to the Thousand Birds Realm or communicate with the Shunhun sect. After the conversation, Sun frowned deeply. After weighing the pros and cons, he nodded and left. After he left for a long time, the rocking recliner of the Chaos Kuan suddenly stopped at a certain point. Crimson and white divine light exploded from his body and the reclining chair. When the light was the most dazzling, he and the reclining chair disappeared. No one knew where they went. Inside the Thousand Birds Realm. Strange, why is this world gradually getting colder? The realm wall is still there, and nothing strange is happening. It's inexplicably cold. Yes, it's indeed cold all of a sudden. This event will only end in 2 or 3 days. Will there be any accidents? With the Shunhun sect and the Tongtian Trading Company, how could there be any abnormalities? The experts of various races and the evil cultivators of the human race, who came and went from different palaces, were discussing from time to time. The topic of discussion was the climate of the Thousand Birds Realm, which was quietly changing. In front of a remote stone hall, Lin Zhuyun, who was walking alone, kept her head down the entire time. She did not interact with anyone and communicated with them. She looked aloof and cold. In the area in front of her, there was a small cultivation room that she had rented. She planned to go over and rest. An indescribable pain came from her flesh aura heaven and earth. Frowning slightly, she immersed herself in it and saw that a pocket-sized well was gradually forming in her frozen flesh aura world. This well had taken shape a few days ago. Then, it started to gather frost energy from somewhere. Without her, without relying on her body and soul thought, This well, that was only as tall as a person's arm slowly grew taller. After this well appeared, her frost poison backfired. She was sometimes twisted and confused. The endless evil thoughts that appeared in her mind were all suppressed and crushed by the frost energy. The problem that had troubled her for a long time was solved because of this unformed well. However, another power that made her panic was gradually forming from the well. It was becoming more and more obvious and stronger. She thought for a long time before she realized that the appearance of this well might have something to do with the blood she had accidentally absorbed from the wreckage of the battleship in the ancient country of the giant spirit race. Another wave of pain came from her chest. She couldn't help but cover her mouth and cough. Just before she entered the pavilion, she hesitated for a moment. Then, she suddenly turned around and looked at the tall Azura warrior. She said in a cold and disgusted tone, "You've been following me for a long time. What do you want? Did Yu Yuan send you to watch my every move?" She had heard from others that this Azura general named Fernan was a bandit that roamed the edge of the Starry River. She also knew that Yu Yuan seemed to have recruited this bandit. Therefore, she assumed that Yu Yuan must have sensed her presence and instructed Fernan to keep an eye on her, so that he could come over and mock her in revenge for what she had done to the Yu clan in Dark Moon City and what Ju, the old servant of the Lin clan, had done to her many years ago. It has nothing to do with him. Fernan also stopped and took a deep look at Lin Zhuyun. He sensed that strange aura. There were some things that Lin Zhuyun might not know, but as a rank 9 Azura, he knew many secrets. He knew what was happening inside Lin Zhuyun's body. There was a trace of sympathy in Fernand's eyes, but of course, he wouldn't remind her or interfere. Every man for himself. He had to plan for himself and his daughter's future. He didn't care who would be sacrificed. Tell him that I don't want to see him. If he dares to ignore the rules of the Chamber of Commerce and kill me, let him do it. After saying this coldly, Lin Zhuyun entered the pavilion and went to a small cultivation room that she had rented with spirit stones. As for Fernan, he sat down silently in a small corner in front of the pavilion. He quietly seemed to be waiting for something. Thousand Birds' realm is turning cold. He Sun said the moment he found President Li and Junshun. President Li's expression was indifferent. Yu Yuan said that when he was in Thousand Birds' realm, he sensed the aura of the dark domain cold well. Thousand Birds' realm is turning cold, which means that the dark domain cold well has most likely arrived secretly. Then are you fully prepared? He Sun let out a sigh of relief. He knew how powerful President Li was. Since President Li already knew the reason and didn't panic at all, he must have a foolproof plan. We'll deal with it as it comes. That dark domain cold well has really appeared. Even if the darkness of the dark domain can penetrate, we don't have to be afraid. President Li pointed at a prismatic crystal pillar. Look, aren't the many mutated monsters and those gray withered trees about to break through the seal? Then what are your preparations? He Sun said solemnly. Taisher and I have naturally made some arrangements. President Li smiled and stared at He Sun for 3 seconds. You're someone close to him. You can ask him. He Sun snorted and didn't say anything. At this moment, Zhou Yu suddenly appeared, his expression dark and ugly. What are you panicking about? President Li was very calm. You arranged for the girl sent from the entrance of the cold abyss. The building she's in has already been enveloped by the dark cold energy. I have reason to believe that the dark domain cold well that we haven't been able to find is in her body. Zhou Yu shouted. President Li's eyes lit up. He wasn't shocked but happy. He shouted, "Good! I'm waiting for the Shura clan to invade." The problem now is that the undying bird's death nest that we connected to other places and temporarily used as a starry sky fairy was suddenly filled with death energy. Zhou Yu took a deep breath. This means that many of our strong reinforcements won't be able to arrive in time. When these words were said, President Li's expression changed slightly. This is unexpected. The dark domain cold energy can penetrate. A terrified scream suddenly came from outside. P.S. This chapter makes up for yesterday's debt. Chapter 1085. The tall Azura general stood in front of the remote stone tower like a boulder, his determined face cold. Behind him, the stone tower Lin Zhuyun was drowned in a ball of darkness so thick that it couldn't be dispersed. Absolute frost power was madly surging inside the darkness and spreading outwards. This kind of extreme darkness and coldness was rarely seen in the world. It was beyond the knowledge of most beings. Not far away from this place, many rank 8 and rank 7 foreign warriors felt their souls tremble. Their heartbeats were also affected, becoming sluggish and sluggish. Next to Fernan, there were corpses lying on the ground in disarray. There were members of the Dark Spirit clan, a female demon, a few warriors of the Silver Scale clan, and the Heavenly Devil, who was dying but hadn't died yet. These dead people had all sensed that something was wrong and tried to kill Lin Zhuyun before the dark domain cold well in Lin Zhuyun's body could be completed. Because of Fernand's existence, those people's hasty actions were aborted before they were even born. By the time the extreme darkness and coldness burst out of Lin Zhuyun's body inside the stone tower, it was too late. Dark domain cold energy. 9-star sage Beirut of the star race, Leo, who had an altar inside his body, and a few other prominent star race clansmen arrived and screamed. Fernand stood in front of the surging darkness, his eyes calm. It was as if he didn't know they were coming. Why, you're not afraid? Beck, who was also from the Curtis family, took out a silver hammer and prepared for battle. It's too late. Beirut sighed. He raised his hand and pressed Beck's arm. He shook his head and said, Fernand has a level 9 bloodline. The Dark Realm's cold energy spreading out from his back can help him increase his fighting strength. Forget you, even if I did my best, I wouldn't be able to do anything to him. Leo took a few steps back and said with a serious expression, Keep your distance. Listen to Leo, Beirut yelled. The Star Race clansmen slowly retreated, but their attention was still on the stone tower. Whoosh! The chubby Zhou Yu suddenly appeared, clutching his horsetail whisk. He didn't look at Fernand. Instead, he gazed deeply into the darkness and asked tentatively, Has Azura of the Dark Realm arrived? Fernand remained silent. Zhou Yu frowned and said, Do you want Elena to die? Fernand's expression flickered. After a moment of hesitation, he said in a hoarse, rough voice, I'm already on my way here. My king's aura is right behind me. Sorry, it's too late. You can't stop it. None of the people here, including Zhou Yu, could pry into the darkness behind him. Fernand was, of course, an exception. In the ancient legends, the ancestors of the Azura race were born in the Dark Realm. Therefore, the Azura race had a mysterious connection with the Dark Realm. Even though many Azura clansmen in the outside world couldn't enter the Dark Realm due to their weakness, the Azura race's bloodline and racial characteristics made it easy for them to adapt to the Dark Realm. The reason this was so was because the earliest Azura had left the Dark Realm and spread their branches outside. The new generation of Azura had an easier time surviving in the outer space and producing more descendants. This was beneficial to the Azura race's racial reproduction. It could increase the population of the Azura race and make the Azura race stronger. The disadvantage was that the Azura born in the outer space couldn't adapt to the Dark Realm. Only those with great talent like Elena could return to their race's homeland, the Dark Realm, when their bloodline reached a certain level. Then, after being tempered and refined in the Dark Realm, they qualified to be called Azura of the Dark Realm. Azura of the Dark Realm meant that they were stronger. They represented the elite of the Azura race. Fernand, although he was once a general who commanded many soldiers, his early training in the Dark Domain was actually a failure. However, he was familiar with the harsh environment of the Dark Realm and could see the scene inside. He knew that at this moment, Lin Zhuyun was lying in a pool of her own blood in the stone pavilion. The well, that he had created with her flesh aura and spiritual power, had already taken shape. Darkness and frost energy kept coming out of the well. Lin Zhuyun was trembling. She was powerless to stop it. She could only feel the change in the small cultivation room she was in. Fernand knew that the king's power would seep in. Next, the warriors who lived in the Dark Realm would come out of the Dark Realm cold well. Their king would step into Thousand Bird Realm and complete the victory of this battle. Fernand suddenly looked at the sky, his eyes flashing with fanaticism. He said, "It really is too late." Leo's expression changed. The realm barrier of Thousand Bird Realm is changing strangely. Everyone looked up at the sky. The rank 9 bloodline warriors and Freedom Realm cultivators could feel that the thin realm barrier of Thousand Bird Realm was absorbing frost energy like a sponge absorbing water. The cold currents inside Thousand Bird Realm and in the outer realms were being absorbed by the realm barrier. Looking from the outer realms, they could see that the realm barrier of Thousand Bird Realm was quickly freezing. It looked like the entire Thousand Bird Realm was being frozen. Look, look! On Wilson's starship, the Coleman family members who didn't qualify to enter Thousand Bird Realm pointed at the changing Thousand Bird Realm and screamed in fear. From where they were, they could see that the thin realm barrier was quickly freezing. Wilson was stunned for a while. Then, his face turned pale with shock. He shouted, "Go! Leave the Annihilation star system as quickly as possible." Asa, who was also a member of the star race, didn't hesitate. He also shouted that he wanted to leave as quickly as possible. Bang! A skinny old man suddenly landed on the Coleman family's ancient starship like a meteor. The moment he landed, most of the Coleman family members' bones exploded, and they turned into clouds of blood mist. They didn't even have the chance to scream. The massive battleship seemed to be unable to withstand the terrifying force of his landing. It instantly disintegrated. He grinned at Wilson, but didn't say anything. Wilson, whose internal organs were protected by a strange armor, didn't die immediately. However, he immediately let out a wail and turned into a pool of blood. You. Asa pointed at him, stammering, and stepped back in despair. A bunch of ants. The skinny old man shook his head and started the slaughter. After the Coleman family's ancient starship, the other races' starships that were anchored in the outer realms were destroyed one after another. One after another, huge warships fell and disintegrated amidst the thick smoke and flames. On the distant dark red continent, wisps of Yu Yuan's flesh power entered the blood prison for the 5th time through the hilt of Gendo's saber. Dense blood-colored patterns started from the hilt of Gendo's saber and slowly extended to the tip. By now, 2/3 of the saber had been covered. The dense blood-colored patterns seemed to be filled with blood-colored sparks that couldn't be seen with the naked eye. The Blue Luan Empress would talk to the Peacock King from time to time, but her attention had always been on Yu Yuan and that demonic blade. She hadn't been distracted for too long. Suddenly, her body trembled slightly, and her eyebrows furrowed. "Is something wrong in the Thousand Birds realm?" the Peacock King asked. Yu Yuan, who was refining Gendo with the help of the life altar, multitasking while infusing his flesh power into the Thousand Birds realm, asked, "You said that great changes are coming to the Thousand Birds realm, didn't you?" "I think so." Chen Qinghuang nodded slightly. After sensing for a while, she said with certainty, "The lair of death connected to me has been affected by a surge of cold energy. It can no longer be used as a Star River ferry." "What do you mean?" Yu Yuan was taken aback. "In other words, the people of the Tongtian Trading Company and the Shenhun sect can't teleport people and items from other Star River ferries to the Thousand Birds realm immediately. Similarly, they can't teleport people and items from the Thousand Birds realm away with the lair of death," Chen Qinghuang explained seriously. However, after a short pause, she said with a calm expression, "It won't affect me. I think I can still take you back to the Thousand Birds realm in a breath's time. Did something happen to the Thousand Birds realm? Yu Yuan asked anxiously. Luo Yu, Wen Lu, Old Tong, Qian Lao Qian, Elena, and many other people who were close to him were all inside. Chen Qinghuang's words made him anxious. It was a matter of time. I just didn't expect it to be so soon. Princess Qing Luan didn't hide it from him. The Chamber of Commerce and the Shunhun sect have their own plans and arrangements. The Chaos Kuan also has one. Other than them, there are also the Azura race and some forces that have yet to be revealed. They are all secretly plotting. She looked at Yu Yuan and said, "Are you sure you still want to go back?" "I don't think we should go back." Outside the multicolored screen of demonic energy, the Peacock King was shocked and uneasy when he heard her words. "I also think it's best not to go back. It's much safer here," Chen Qinghuang suggested kindly. Chapter 1086. Yu Yuan swallowed 2 great blood origin pills in a row. Boom! The blood energy was so strong that it shocked both Chen Qinghuang and the Peacock King. It was like 2 erupting volcanoes that spewed out blood energy flames from Yu Yuan's organs. "Your life altar is still in Zhendo," the Peacock King reminded. "I don't have to rely on that altar." Yu Yuan, who had been sitting quietly, slowly stood up and suddenly activated the fiend body refinement art with all his strength. With himself as the center, a strange magnetic field instantly formed around him. He raised his head to look at the multicolored screen of demonic energy and said, "Remove the barrier you've created." "Haunch, do you want to die?" Clusters of orange flames suddenly appeared in the Peacock King's strange eyes. With a cold expression, she opened her arms and made a gesture of spreading her wings. Then, colorful wings grew out and spread out rapidly, turning her into a beautiful, enormous peacock in a short period of time. "Do as he says." Princess Qing Luan sighed softly. The Peacock King hesitated for a moment before letting out a cry that seemed capable of tearing apart the void. The multicolored screen of demonic energy instantly disappeared, and the surging tainted supernatural energy immediately gathered from all directions. ZZZT 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 ZZZT. With Yu Yuan as the center, the twisted, violent, and chaotic energy filled with dozens of tainted supernatural energy, impurities, and toxins were injected into the magnetic vortex formed by the fiend body refinement art. Crack! Under the impact of such terrifying and violent energy, some of the weaker bones in Yu Yuan's body broke. However, under the pressure of the strange magnetic field, the speed and efficiency of his physical soul absorbing and refining the great blood origin pills increased greatly. Along with the piercing pain and the shaking of the small world in his sea of consciousness, his bones, meridians, and flesh were all undergoing minute changes. However, his flesh was gradually cracking because it could not withstand the tainted supernatural energy in the outside world. In an extremely short period of time, Yu Yuan's body was already covered in crisscrossing scars. Blood flowed from his face and neck, causing his entire body to become extremely terrifying and miserable. "Haunch, you're really cruel to yourself." Peacock King's voice carried a hint of mockery and reverence. She also saw that the magnetic vortex formed by the evil demon body tempering incantation was madly gathering and devouring the tainted power in the starry river. Originally, the scattered filthy power was not something that an ordinary body of flesh and blood could bear. Only an 8th-level great demon with a yang spirit body could soar in outer space without being eroded. Yu Yuan, because of his tyrannical physique, could move freely in the Star River even though he was at the soul-traversing realm. But if he gathered the scattered filth esper ability to his side and used the fiend body refinement art to form a magnetic vortex to increase the power of the filth esper ability by dozens of times, even the rank 9 Peacock King didn't think that she would be safe inside. Rebuilding after destruction, surviving a calamity, He is using this method to temper his body. The wounds on his body made this body of his desire for more flesh and blood power. Because of this, the tremendous blood power of the two great blood origin pills was able to find an outlet after erupting. Princess Qing Luan watched for a while and roughly understood why Yu Yuan had done this. If he wanted to quickly refine the terrifying blood power contained in the great blood origin pills and disperse it into his body for his use, he needed to meet other conditions. He had gathered the tainted power with the evil demon body tempering incantation to destroy this body, so that the great blood origin pills could be quickly refined and replenished. However, Yu Yuan didn't seem to be doing that. He didn't care about his battered body at all as he poured all of the flesh power that had emerged from the great blood vitality pill into the demon saber in his hand. Gendo. The dense blood patterns on the blade released a bloody light that slithered towards the tip of the blade like slender blood snake. Princess Qing Luan watched the changes in Gendo and Yu Yuan's terrible body, which looked like it was about to explode and die. She fell silent. She knew that Yu Yuan was trying her best to endure the pain in her body. She knew that her judgment and understanding of Yu Yuan was wrong. Yu Yuan did not think about tempering his body at all. He did not think about infusing his blood energy into Gendo while healing his wounds. He gave up on tempering his body and endured the intense pain that would make a normal person collapse. He poured all of his refined flesh energy into Gendo. He used this method to squeeze out as much blood energy as possible from the great blood origin pill. He ignored the worsening of his injuries and refined Gendo's blood prison as quickly as possible. Yu Yuan's crazy actions caused Princess Qing Luan to have a thought. Perhaps the master Gendo had been waiting for all this time was Yu Yuan. Only such a stubborn and crazy person had the qualifications to wield this Gendo. Only then could he unleash the Gendo's power to the extreme and have a chance to devour the Chaos Koan. It seems that you have made a decision in your heart. After saying this, Princess Qing Luan did not speak again. Instead, she closed her eyes and extended her consciousness. She sensed the existence and changes of the Death Lair while secretly communicating with the Peacock King. The Death Lair has lost its function as a fairy, but I can return at any time. However, I am not sure if it is a trap. I am also worried that after I return to the Thousand-Bird Realm with Yu Yuan, I will not be able to use the same method to descend to the destruction lair that is gradually moving away. Princess Qing Luan communicated with the Peacock King using a secret method. You mean? If I go, I might not be able to return? There is a very high possibility. Then do you want to take the risk with him? To be honest, there is no reason for him and you to return. To be reborn after death, to seek life in death, I feel that the Thousand-Bird Realm right now is an opportunity for me and also a great opportunity for him. Since he has made a decision and dares to be so crazy and reckless, I also want to be impulsive once. Two madmen. Thousand-Bird Realm. Zhou Yu of the Chamber of Commerce, White Crane, Great Demon Lulu, Zhongli de Pan, and the foreign races Beirut, Canli and other nobles and bloodline warriors all rushed over because of the changes in the stone building. Shocked, puzzled, and nervous gazes fell on the place that was drowned by the dark absolute cold ability. At this moment the tall Shura general stood sideways. One side of his body was in the darkness, and the other side was outside. As the dark absolute cold ability spread out, he constantly adjusted and walked out with small steps, always keeping a part of his body outside. He looked around anxiously, as if searching for something. Father! Finally, he heard Elena's voice. However, his beloved daughter was trapped in a cage that President Li had condensed with golden lightning. A bolt of lightning struck Elena's body, causing some of the exposed skin of this young lady with a hot figure to split open. President, she was brought in by Yu Yuan, Zhou Yu reminded him. He told me to take good care of her. Don't worry. She won't die. She'll only suffer some superficial wounds. Even now, President Lee still didn't seem flustered. His calmness and indifference made many outsider experts feel inexplicably reassured. I just want to ask a few simple questions. President Lee looked at Fernan. Did that dark domain cold well fuse into that girl's body after it was shattered? Is there any involvement of the Chaos Kuan behind this matter? He had already learned that the Chaos Kuan, a star behemoth, had destroyed one ancient starship after another. After making a deal with the Chaos Kuan, he had specially arranged for Lin Zhuyun to be sent from the frigid depths of the Nine Serenities to the frigid depths in the domain of annihilation. He wanted to be sure that the Chaos Kuan had long since made a secret deal with the Shura of Gojoseon to send Lin Zhuyun to him. Lin Zhuyun's characteristics, her cultivation of the frigid ice arts, and her body that had been forged through many fortuitous encounters over the years, allowed Lin Zhuyun to not only carry the fragments of the dark domain cold well without being discovered, but also allow those fragments to take shape with her help. This was also beyond President Lee's expectations, so he wanted to figure it out. I don't know, Fernan answered with a serious face. It's just a small accident, because this girl wasn't our first choice. A deep, majestic voice echoed out from the darkness of absolute coldness. My lord! Fernan's face was filled with fanaticism. The Shura of Gojoseon. Everyone's expressions flickered. Chapter 1087. Upon hearing Shura of Gojoseon's voice coming from the surging darkness, everyone who had gathered here turned pale with fright. The current chief of the Azura race, a rank 10 bloodline monarch, was one of the top 3 terrifying existences of all the foreign races in the vast universe outside of Howran. His voice alone was enough to cause the dark tide of absolute frost to spread even faster. Everyone saw that the darkness was madly spreading outwards, forcing everyone to retreat. No one, no expert, dared to enter the depths of the darkness and face Shura of Gojoseon at this moment. Fernan, who had once been a bandit, was instantly swallowed up by the extremely thick darkness of absolute frost. Then, the sound of a giant beast's hammer hitting the ground rang out from within the stone tower. Zhonglida grinned and chuckled. The Dark Realm Azura has arrived. Then, he looked up at the sky. The Freedom Realm cultivators, rank 9 demons, and foreign experts also keenly sensed that the frost energy flowing towards the realm barrier had intensified by more than 10 times due to Shura of Gojoseon's voice. The frozen realm barrier was completely sealed by the frost energy in an extremely short time. Oh no! 9-star Sage Beirut sensed in silence and frowned deeply. He said, the realm barrier is no longer so easy to penetrate. It's almost impossible for anyone with a bloodline below rank 9 to break through the frozen realm barrier and rush out of Thousand Bird Realm. Everyone's hearts sank when they heard this. I have bad news to tell you, Fernan said slowly in a rough voice from within the absolute frost darkness. The immortal bird's nest of death can no longer be used as a ferry. In other words, don't expect to be able to leave Thousand Bird Realm through the nest of death. The nest of death has lost its effectiveness. Oh no. Many people with low cultivation and bloodline grades looked ashen. Canli, Mia, Faith, and other experts of the dark spirit race also frowned because of this. They hadn't come here alone. Many of their subordinates and clansmen were only at the 8th grade or even lower. They had thought that they could still count on the lair of death that was temporarily used as a ferry to send their weak clansmen out. But now they could not even count on that. And it was still Fernan's voice. All of the ancient starships from the outer realms have been destroyed. A large number of mutant monsters are about to fill the starry river outside the Thousand Birds realm. Even if we go out, we won't have any ancient starships to use, and we'll have to deal with those man-eating mutated monsters. Fernan explained the harsh situation in front of them so that all the Howran humans and experts from other domains would know what was going on. Without the Star River Ferry, it was impossible to escape the Thousand Birds realm. The realm wall was frozen, the weak couldn't break through it, couldn't soar into outer space. Even if they could, they would have to deal with the mutated monsters outside the Milky Way. Many experts from other races who had come from afar had ashen faces. They had never thought that such a grand event would turn into a disaster. Everyone, retreat to the lair of death. Carefree realm experts of the same level, follow me and pay close attention to this darkness. President Lee slowly floated into the sky and looked at the darkness that was spreading outwards. A pair of golden eyes gradually formed a blazing electric light. Remember one thing, this grand meeting of the Thousand-Bird Realm is jointly organized by us and the Divine Soul Sect. You don't have to believe in our strength, but you have to believe in the Shunhun Sect's ability to solve the problem at hand. The Shunhun Sect. Many people secretly sucked in a breath of air. Because of these 3 words, they became excited. Listen to President Lee first. At this time, we have to work together and face it together. Retreat to the immortal bird's lair of death. The leaders of the various races immediately arranged for the 9th grade experts to follow them. Those with low bloodline grades would follow the guidance of the Chamber of Commerce and go to the lair of death. The darkness of absolute cold continued to spread. Shura of Gojoseon's dignified voice gradually replaced Fernand's. From the darkness, it resounded through the entire Thousand Birds realm, and even the sea of stars outside Thousand Birds realm. I am Shura of Gojoseon. The Azura race has always been the elite force of the Alliance. For tens of thousands of years, my race and the humans and great monsters of Howren have fought countless bloody battles. Deep hatred unresolvable, unerasable. Everyone, you once fought with us against Haodong, Haodong said with a smile. Since when did your views and attitudes change? Just because of the words of the Shunhun sect and the Chamber of Commerce, you can let go of the hatred accumulated over tens of thousands of years? Everyone, please think about it carefully. Do you want to stick with us and uphold the oath of our ancestors and slaughter all living beings, or do you want to team up with the wolves? Shura of Gojoseon's voice was filled with endless hatred. It rumbled through Thousand Birds' realm and the sea of stars outside. Every surviving non-human race could hear his words. They frowned and thought deeply about his words. Those who are willing to wield their blades and kill Howren humans and great monsters will still be our allies. Otherwise, we will be mortal enemies. In the end, Shura of Gojoseon gave such a choice. On the dark red ground covered in ravines, Yu Yuan lay in a pool of his own blood, covered in wounds. Whoosh! The crimson life altar finally flew out of the fiendish blade and stopped in front of his chest. I've already used up all of my pills and outsider blood essence that can benefit my flesh aura. The dispirited Yu Yuan struggled to sit up. With a thought, his congealed blood was devoured by his life altar. If the 2 of you have anything rich in blood, please lend me some. He placed Gendo's blood prison on his legs. The blood-colored patterns on the blade faded away. Chen Qinghuang knew that he had used his own flesh and blood energy to fill the fine patterns inside Gendo. He had figured out how Gendo worked and refined it for his own use. However, when he used Gendo in battle, he still needed a vast amount of flesh and blood to activate it. During battle, this Gendo would instantly devour the flesh and bones of the dead and increase the power of the 7 blood souls and countless blood-colored sparks. When this power reached a certain level, it would mercilessly devour Yu Yuan. The previous 7 masters had used up a lot of their energy after a bloody battle, and Gendo had become stronger and stronger. Then, it suddenly took the opportunity to devour the master who wielded the blade. Take it. A dark brown heart slid out from under the Peacock King's wings. It entered the life altar in a straight line. The heart exploded like a black sun. Thousands of rays of black blood light were refined by the spinning life altar and refined into pure power. A black mist was released from the life altar, giving off a strong stench of blood. The heart of a rank 9 expert of the black scale race. Yu Yuan's expression changed as he sensed the familiar aura from the heart. I'll remember this, Peacock King. I owe you a favor. Yu Yuan, a dark domain cold well formed inside your Hauran fiancé's body. Chunqing Huang opened her eyes, as if she had understood the situation of the thousand-bird realm through the death lair. Many dark domain Azura have already entered the thousand-bird realm with the help of that well. Let me ask you again. Are you sure you want to return to thousand-bird realm? Lin Zhuyun. Yu Yuan was shocked. She finally knew where the dark domain cold well, that she could not find any traces of, came from. When my body recovers, I will return to the thousand birds realm. I don't believe that the Shunhun sect will be controlled by the Shura of Gojoseon so easily. Chapter 1088. The realm barrier of Thousand Bird Realm had become as hard and cold as white jade due to the influx of foreign cold energy. Outside the realm, lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. Terrifying gusts of wind and magnetic storms in the starry river roared like ferocious beasts. The crackling lightning and thunder slammed into the icy realm barrier, as if they were going to destroy the world. However, the realm barrier was as firm as a rock that had been around for billions of years. It didn't budge in the slightest, no matter how strong the wind, the sun, or the storm was. The wreckage of many ancient starships, broken outsider corpses, and pieces of flesh were also carried towards the realm barrier of Thousand Bird Realm by the fierce storm. As if to prove that the realm barrier was unbreakable, not a single crack could be seen on the crystalline realm barrier that had absorbed the vast cold energy of the domain of annihilation. This made many trapped people feel desperate and powerless. The lair of death seemed to be located in a deep pit that led to the depths of the earth. Countless outsiders and human cultivators were staring at the pit with eager eyes. It seemed to be yearning for a glimmer of hope to appear, hoping that the lair of death would be restored to the galaxy fairy. However, a bone-chilling coldness gradually emerged from the lair that was exuding the aura of death and desolation. This coldness was exactly the same as the aura of the realm barrier. Everyone immediately realized that the lair of death that Princess Qing Luan had repaired had also been infiltrated by the cold energy that had seeped in earlier. Fizz! A thin beam of golden lightning shot out from within the cage, causing one of the naturally sharp spikes on Elena's shoulder to shatter with a cracking sound. Shura! Many unreadable gazes were fixed on Elena. The Shura girl, who couldn't break free from the golden lightning cage, felt uncomfortable under the gazes of so many people. She snorted with a cold face. The Chamber of Commerce should use her to coerce Fernan into destroying that dark domain cold well, as soon as possible. Sean Kennard, who was known as the Son of the Forest among the dark spirits, pointed at Elena in the golden cage and asked Zhou Yu, Mr. Zhou, she was brought in by Yu Yuan, wasn't she? Was it because of her and Yu Yuan that General Shura was invited by your Chamber of Commerce? As he spoke, Kennard looked at the icy realm barrier with fear in his eyes. After he had been expelled from the Chamber of Commerce, Kelt had risked his life to take him back to the Thousand Bird Realm through the realm barrier, which hadn't been fully stabilized yet. When he and Kelt had returned to the Thousand Bird Realm, they had seen the ancient starship that they had spent a fortune to build explode in flames and light. Other than him and Kelt, the rest of the dark spirit clansmen who had stayed in the outer realm were all dead. He originally thought that he would be safe after returning to the Thousand Birds realm, but he didn't expect that as soon as he entered, he would discover that a cold well connected to the dark realm had been opened. The dark realm Azura in the galaxy had already stepped into the Thousand Birds realm, and he even heard the voice of the cold Shura of Gojoseon. Kennard took it for granted that the Shura of Gojoseon had ordered the slaughterers in the outer realm to come here. Almost all of his clansmen and subordinates had died, and their starship had been destroyed. Now, he had fled back to the Thousand Birds realm like a stray dog. However, the Azura race was still aggressive, and the absolute darkness was still spreading. Naturally, he pointed his spear at Elena. Like him, after learning that their starship had been destroyed and their clansmen had been killed, they looked around and wanted to vent their hatred on Elena. Ah, heart! Benin, who was a void spirit, stood with Wenlu, who had the bloodline of the dark spirit race, Luoyu and Lady Peach. At this moment she sighed softly, feeling a bit sad. Pattinson of the Shadow race also looked rather gloomy. Heart of the Silver Scale race hadn't been valued by the Chamber of Commerce because his status wasn't high enough, so he had stayed in the outer realm. Other than him, there were many bandits from the Shadow race. They had escorted Yuing here and then went to the Dark Paradise. Pattinson knew in his heart that they were most likely dead. She was brought in by Yu Yuan, but her father, the bandit king named Fernan, isn't like that. Zhou Yu glanced at Kennard and said indifferently, Fernan came in because of the president. Do you have any objections? Hearing him mention President Li, Kennard snorted and said resentfully, I hope the Chamber of Commerce and the Shunhun sect can give everyone an explanation. They can't even guarantee our safety, and they still want to hold the Chamber of Commerce here. Are they making fun of us? The Chamber of Commerce and the Shunhun sect do indeed have the greatest responsibility. We trusted you, so we were invited and acted according to your rules. The result? Our ship that was docked outside the realm was destroyed by that Chaos Kuan. Our clansmen died at the hands of that Chaos Kuan. A star behemoth can enter the Annihilation Star domain with your approval? Since it's here, why can't you restrain it? You can't control it, so it shouldn't have come to the Annihilation Star domain. Where is the Divine King of the Shunhun sect? You have to give us an explanation. Hundreds of people responded. Unable to find a way out, the clansmen started to denounce the Chamber of Commerce and the Shunhun sect because of Kennard's lead. At this moment, President Li, Jun Chun, White Crane, Green Willow, and other members of the Chamber of Commerce, new and old, were all waiting in the dark and cold area. Zhou Yu was temporarily in charge here. Zhou Yu's heart was heavy. Looking at the nest surging with death energy in front of him, he wanted to say that as long as this nest could be used as a galaxy crossing, the Divine King of the Shunhun sect could come instantly. But now, I suggest that the Chamber of Commerce execute this Azura girl first. A clansman of the Crypt race stared at Elena gloomily. My clansmen are all dead. My clan's only remaining starship crashed in the outer realm. I saw it clearly. Since it was the Shura who started this war, then this Shura woman should die immediately. Kill her. Kill her first to prove your stance, and that you're not with the Shura of Gojoseon. That's right. Maybe the Chamber of Commerce and the Shunhun sect are working with the Shura of Gojoseon to deal with us. The other races who had been incited shouted and gathered toward Elena's location, forcing Zhou Yu to quickly make a move and kill Elena. In the golden cage, the petite Elena curled up and slowly lowered her head. She sighed silently and murmured, Why did Yu Yuan suddenly leave? Was it because he knew that he was in a desperate situation that he left without saying goodbye to Princess Qing Luan? If not, would he still come back? Would she be able to see him again? Like a small beast, Elena, who was about to be sent to the meat grinder, was not afraid of the extremists of the various clans who were slowly approaching with malice. She did not even think about how her father would be treated by his former clansmen in that absolute cold darkness. She only hoped that it would be great if she could see Yu Yuan again before she died. If I had known this would happen, I would have taken the initiative to stick to you after entering the Thousand Birds realm. I would have stayed by your side regardless of everything. Elena's heart was filled with great regret. She didn't know why she would feel such a deep sense of longing and regret toward Yu Yuan, whom she had only met by chance and had only spent a few moments with. Whoosh! The superpower surging within the giant withered branch that formed the death lair suddenly shone with beams of grayish-white light. The entire lair suddenly exploded with a thick stench of death. Stay away. Those who smelled something wrong changed their expressions and hurriedly told those who were close to the lair to avoid it. Zhou Yu's eyes lit up. A strange force that could cut through time and space and cause the galaxy to tremble suddenly burst out from the death lair. In the next moment, two figures appeared at the center of the death lair almost at the same time. Yu Yuan, Princess Qing Luan, Luo Yu, Ziqing, Old Tong, Wen Lu, and the people on Madame Peach Blossom's side suddenly relaxed a lot because of the return of that figure. As for Zhou Yu, Can Li, and some of the people who knew the secrets of the death lair, they were looking at Chen Qinghuang. Inside the cage made of golden lightning, the Azura girl abruptly raised her head when she heard that familiar name. Her charming face was filled with excitement and sincere surprise. She clasped her hands together and made a prayer gesture. She muttered something in the language of the Azura race. What's going on? After stepping out of the death lair, Yu Yuan carried Zhendo called Blood Prison and walked in the direction of Zhou Yu, Xun Feiqing, Yuing, Tan Yuan, and the others. Tan Yuan and the others, who were proficient in body refinement and had yang god cultivation, trembled when he approached. Many other foreign races with extraordinary bloodlines suddenly began to retreat in fear when Yu Yuan jumped out of the death lair, as if they did not dare to get close to him. Among everyone, Ziqing of the blood god felt it the most. Yu Yuan strode over, the blood in her body was boiling because of this. She closed her eyes and sensed that Yu Yuan, who was slowly approaching, was like an ocean of blood. Countless blood souls were roaring and roaring, as if they wanted to devour all living beings in the area and crush all flesh and bones. Zhendo's blood prison. And Ziqing opened her eyes, and purple light shone from the depths of her pupils. She took a deep breath and bit the tip of her tongue, using the pain to force herself to calm down. Female war god Xun Feiqing, Tan Yuan, Yuing, and many other foreign races with powerful bloodlines also adjusted themselves. The stronger one's body was, the more affected they were by the Zhendo, and the more they could feel the terrifying blood power released by the Zhendo. Sorry, this blade has just been refined, and can't hide the blood power it's releasing. After stilling for a moment, Yu Yuan understood the situation. He first gave an embarrassed smile to the people in front of him, and then said to Zhou Yu, I brought her here. No matter what happens, don't treat a guest like this. This. Zhou Yu looked troubled. She's not a guest. That Azura general betrayed us. He helped a human woman open a dark domain cold well, Kennard said in a low voice. Yu Yuan turned his head and slowly narrowed his eyes. He said in a tone that made Kennard tremble, Why are you still here? He snorted and looked at Zhou Yu. I remember, I told the Chamber of Commerce that he should have been driven out of Thousand Bird Realm, right? After he was driven out, he came back because of the chaos outside, Zhou Yu explained with a wry smile. He either shut up or get out of Thousand Bird Realm. Here, a person who shouldn't be here has no right to speak, Yu Yuan said coldly. Chapter 1089. Hearing Yu Yuan's words, the hearts of everyone who had gathered around the lair of death flickered slightly. Many of them didn't know about the conflict between Kennard and Yu Yuan, nor did they know that a few days ago, because Kennard had persuaded a young girl from the dark spirit race to take the flaming cloud devil armor and the items that Ziqing had taken a fancy to, Yu Yuan had been so furious that she wanted the Chamber of Commerce to drive Kennard away. The Chamber of Commerce didn't publicize this matter because they cared about Kennard and his father's face. The small number of people who knew the truth were all experts of different races. They didn't want to offend the dark spirit race, so they kept quiet. This made many people think that the Dark Spirit clan, represented by Kennard, had bought the items they were satisfied with through this grand transaction, so they left first. Then, he discovered that the Primal Chaos Kuan had started a massacre and fled back to Thousand Bird Realm. Who would have thought that this son of the forest had been expelled by the Chamber of Commerce because of his conflict with Yu Yuan? I. The son of the forest, who was full of grievances, bulged his face and didn't look handsome anymore. Alright, don't say anything else. Canli, the holy daughter of the bright light race, said softly, we need to rely on Yu Yuan in many ways. If you anger him, The Chamber of Commerce and the Shunhun sect will only abandon you. Kennard's sinister eyes stared at Yu Yuan's back. He wanted to say a few more harsh words. However, when he saw the demonic blade, for some unknown reason, his chi and blood suddenly surged. The Dharma robe he was wearing was also stimulated by the external evil energy, and it suddenly burst out with green flowing light. Kennard let out a muffled groan and finally closed his mouth. He hurriedly adjusted his body. She's in Thousand Bird Realm. As long as she doesn't step into the Dark Realm's cold energy, she won't be able to escape. Yu Yuan walked in front of Zhou Yu and looked down at Elena, whose eyes were shining. Do you want to undo these golden lights, or do you want me to? Zhou Yu smiled bitterly. I'll do it. He swung his horsetail whisk, and a bright ripple submerged the golden cage like water. The bolts of golden lightning suddenly condensed into golden lotus petals, which suddenly withered and fell to the sides. Because of this, Elena was freed and took a step forward. She smiled sweetly with narrowed eyes and said, If the Thousand Birds realm is trampled to the ground by the Azura race and all of them die, you'll be fine. I will beg my father and Shura of Gojoseon to guarantee your safety. The reason why my father agreed to the clan head's request is because he received a guarantee. She clenched her fist and said confidently, Little grandaunt, just shut up. Zhou Yu shook his head and thought to himself, Why don't you take a look at the situation in front of you? Why do you have to talk nonsense without knowing the difference between life and death? Stop talking. Yu Yuan also felt a headache. He glared at her and signaled her to shut up. Elena nodded repeatedly and obediently said, I'll listen to you. Your Majesty. At this time, Zhou Yu, who was in charge of guarding this place, glanced at Chen Qinghuang. Because of his words, the rest of the people's gazes also looked over at the same time. Beside the death lair, Princess Qingluan, who was wearing an emperor's robe and a phoenix crown, and whose true appearance could not be seen, was full of mystery. No one could figure out her background and methods. I know what you want to say. Chen Qinghuang's face behind the bead curtain frowned slightly. His voice was as dignified as Shura of Gojoseon, filled with the unique arrogance of a superior. I can't turn this death lair into a Star River ferry, and I can't take the rest of the people away from this lair. Chi. As she spoke, the cold fog that filled the death lair suddenly swallowed the majestic cold energy and turned into a thin layer of ice. This ice was exactly the same as the boundary wall of the Thousand Birds realm. Zhou Yu's expression changed instantly. Chen Qinghuang sighed faintly and said, It seems that someone deliberately left a door for me and Yu Yuan to come back. Zhou Yu was also proficient in the power of space. From the changes in the death lair, he understood the subtext from her words. Before the cold fog in the death lair turned into a thin layer of ice, she could still bring Yu Yuan back. But if it was before, the situation in the lair was like this, she could not use the power of comprehension to bring Yu Yuan from another galaxy and teleport here in an instant. The secret caster had deliberately left a door for her and Yu Yuan, inviting them to enter the trap. Now, as that person wished, she and Yu Yuan had indeed returned to the Thousand Bird realm from the outer Star River, and the door had immediately closed. She was unable to turn this death lair into a Star River ferry, unable to break through the thin layer of ice, unable to even mobilize the hidden power of the death lair. Whoosh! Fei Shui of the Void Spirits arrived quietly like a ghost. Standing in front of the death lair, she looked at Yu Yuan, who had just returned. I can't believe you're back. Fei Shui seemed surprised. Can't I come back? Yu Yuan was confused. You should be able to learn what happened in the Thousand Birds realm through the death lair, right? Fei Shui turned her head to look at Chen Qinghuang. You know that the cold energy of the dark realms is already spreading. Why did you bring him back? Chen Qinghuang's attitude was cold. There are always some people in this world who are not afraid of death. Many people could tell from her tone that she wasn't friendly at all to Elder Fei Shui, the most famous member of the Void Spirits. Mr. Zhou, President Li heard of Yu Yuan's return and heard my suggestion, so he asked me to come here. Fei Shui kept adjusting her gaze, and then looked at Zhou Yu. I know that Mr. Zhou is also proficient in spatial power, and you have the power to set up a Star River ferry. However, with the interference of external forces, it will be difficult for you in the current Thousand Birds realm, won't it? Zhou Yu snorted. Don't flatter me. I know that I can't do what you said at the moment. In that case. Fei Shui stretched out her voice and nodded. After hesitating for a few seconds, she said, I think I can do it. However, I need to borrow something. Only with that thing, my Void Spirit's bloodline, and the help of other tools of my race, can I reopen that Star River ferry in the Death Lair. Upon hearing these words, all of the despairing people were suddenly cheered up. Everyone's attention and expectant gazes fell on Fei Shui. At this moment, Fei Shui seemed to be releasing a brilliant light, making her student Bei Ning secretly clench his fists. He thought to himself, this is the value of my race. This is the power I seek. What do you need? The one who asked was Chen Qinghuang. Her eyes under the beaded curtain gradually showed a hint of playfulness, but others couldn't see it. In the Void Spirit's race, that thing is called the Heaven-Splitting Divine Stone. In the Howran Great World, it's called the Dragon Beheading Platform. Fei Shui smiled and looked at Yu Yuan with a gentle gaze. You all know that the Dragon Beheading Platform originally belonged to us Void Spirit. That Divine King took it away from the Nirvana Spirit World. As expected, when Yu Yuan heard half of it, he knew what this Elder of the Void Spirits was planning. Looking at Fei Shui, who had gained the approval of everyone with just a few words, and hearing her use the excuse of reopening the Star River ferry for everyone, Yu Yuan instinctively felt uncomfortable when she mentioned the Dragon Beheading Platform. She wanted him to obediently hand over the Dragon Beheading Platform in the name of righteousness? Yu Yuan curled his lips and shook his head with a sneer. You've misunderstood. I don't want to take the Dragon Beheading Platform for myself. Fei Shui saw his dissatisfaction and hurriedly explained, as if afraid that he would think too much. I'm just borrowing it. I know what's inside the 2 Dragon Beheading Platforms. The corpse of a rank 10 Frost Dragon is enough to shatter the thin ice in the lair of death. The aura of the power of space and time, after being converted by my bloodline, can open the sealed Star River ferry and send everyone out safely. Pausing, she said, the experts of the Chamber of Commerce and the Shunhun sect arranged at other ferries can also come instantly. After saying this, Fei Shui tactfully fell silent and looked at Yu Yuan expectantly. She seemed to be waiting for Yu Yuan to take out the Dragon Beheading Platform and give it to him. What are you hesitating for, human boy? That heaven-splitting divine stone belongs to the Void Spirit. Elder Fei Shui is just using it. Why don't you take it out quickly? Senior Fei Shui is doing this for the good of all of us. Don't fail to appreciate her kindness. Give her the heaven-splitting divine stone, and the crisis of Thousand Birds realm will be resolved. The rank 8 and rank 7 clansmen, including some human evil cultivators that Yu Yuan wasn't familiar with, stood up for Fei Shui. They shouted loudly and asked Yu Yuan to take out the Dragon Beheading Platform and give it to Fei Shui to reopen the Star River ferry. Chapter 1090. Due to the spread of absolute cold and darkness and the gathering of mutated monsters in the outside world, the guests from various races only wanted a way to escape the shackles of Thousand Bird Realm. When the lair of death was sealed by thin ice and they could not see any hope, the respected Faith suddenly came. Not only did she come, she also opened up a path for them to leave Thousand Bird Realm. They naturally stood on Faith's side. Without needing Faith to say anything, they began to pressure Yu Yuan together. Faith herself, on the other hand, fell silent. She stood quietly in the lair of death, her wise and deep eyes observing the thin layer of white ice inside the lair, as if she was considering how to break it. Whoosh! Tiny crystalline lights moved quickly inside the thin ice at the center of the lair, as if they were continuing to strengthen the ice. From the looks of it, it would only be more troublesome if the ice was not broken as soon as possible. It was like the realm wall of Thousand Bird Realm. It was easy to break at first, but the more it absorbed, the harder it was to break through. Yu Yuan. Facing the angry clansmen of various races, Zhou Yu of the Chamber of Commerce felt a headache and sighed with a bitter face. Even he felt that Yu Yuan could not fight against the flood of power at this moment, so he might as well borrow the dragon beheading platform for now. The dragon beheading platform. Yu Yuan tugged at the corner of his mouth and revealed an ambiguous smile. With a thought, the piece of gray stone that had merged into one flew out of the Zhigung meridian point in his chest. The dragon beheading platform was not put into the universe ring. Because Consort Han was refining the dark domain cold well, it was left in the cauldron. Heaven-splitting divine stone. The moment the dragon beheading platform appeared, the light that burst out of Faith's eyes made many people not dare to look directly at it. Her eyes were as bright as the sun. Her lips quivered as her hands trembled slightly. She actually bowed to the dragon beheading platform in Yu Yuan's hand in front of everyone, as if she were a spirit. It was as if she was worshipping the creator of their race, the giant butterfly. Crack! 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 After the dragon beheading platform left the cauldron, the thin layer of ice in the nest next to it seemed to have been triggered and shot over. Yu Yuan's heart trembled slightly as he watched the frigid crystal light approach him. Master, the cold crystal lightning was attracted by Consort Han in the dragon beheading platform. It might also be attracted by the well. The voice of the cauldron spirit Yui rang out in Yu Yuan's mind. This made him calm down immediately, as if he was facing a great enemy. Then, he sent a strand of his spiritual sense into the space within the dragon-subduing platform. Consort Han stood at the top of the 8 ice mountains formed by the corpse of the rank 10 frost dragon. The fragments of the dark domain cold well piled up one by one, like a mystical ice armor, enveloping her instead. Outside the gradually forming dark domain cold well, her long scorpion tail looked like it had transformed into a dragon's body. Suddenly, hailstones began to fall in this small world of extreme cold. The so-called hailstones were the cold crystals that had flown out of the lair of death. The enormous hailstones contained extreme cold energy, and they were actually being sucked into the dark domain cold well that was taking shape, merging into it. Seeing this, Yu Yuan secretly relaxed. He instinctively sensed that the cold crystals that had flown out of the death lair would help Consort Han refine the well and allow Consort Han to truly become the strongest fiendish devil. In addition, the thin layer of ice that sealed the death lair was also cracking. This also meant that Princess Qing Luan could regain control of the death lair and use her Dao integration power to unleash super-powerful combat strength inside. The death lair would become Qin Qinghuang's blade and allow her to become the strongest force in the thousand-bird realm below the Divine King. Since it was killing 2 birds with 1 stone, Yu Yuan was willing to sit back and enjoy the fruits of others' labor. He allowed the cold crystals to continuously turn into hailstones and enter the world inside the dragon beheading platform. Bloodline Void Tremor. An ancient, blurry chant came from Faith's chest. The secrets of her bloodline seemed to be connected to the boundless universe, the sacred land of the void spirits. The enormous butterfly suddenly flapped its sparkling and translucent wings in another part of the starry river. Dazzling 7-colored divine light rippled out, causing endless changes to occur in the galaxy. At the same time, in the deep pit in the thousand-bird realm, the thin layer of ice inside the death lair was instantly crushed and turned into ice sparks. Yu Yuan's expression changed drastically. He saw that in another small world inside the dragon beheading platform, a part of the remaining spatial power inside the corpse of the space-time dragon that had died countless years ago had been gathered. That part of the spatial power seemed to be affected by Faith's bloodline and magically transformed into a beautiful butterfly. As soon as the colorful butterfly appeared, the interior of the death lair seemed to have opened a space gate. All of a sudden, the dragon-slaying platform in Yu Yuan's hand flew into the death lair and landed in front of Fei Shui. This elder of the void spirit race, who was deeply respected by everyone, faced the dragon beheading platform with a devout attitude. Her hands trembled as she placed them lightly on the dragon beheading platform. In a language that no one could understand, she kept muttering something in a low voice. She seemed to be praying, begging, and hoping that her ancestor would respond. Boundless radiance suddenly blossomed from the heaven-splitting divine stone, accompanied by unimaginable spatial fluctuations. Pop! The wisp of soul thought that Yu Yuan had put into the heaven-splitting divine stone was destroyed. His eyes turned cold as he looked coldly at the great elder of the void spirit race. "Didn't you say that you were just borrowing it? You want to borrow my item and erase my soul thought? Don't you think that's a bit too much?" Did Elder Faith succeed? She's going to use the power of the heaven-splitting divine stone to reopen the galaxy crossing. At a critical moment, the power of the void spirit race is the most reliable. When the dragon beheading platform fell into Faith's hands and the lair of death began to undergo shocking changes, the guests of various races immediately became excited. Their cheers drowned out Yu Yuan's questioning voice, making Yu Yuan's words insignificant. "Something's not right." Zhou Yu, who also had a deep understanding of spatial power, narrowed his eyes as a strong sense of vigilance rose in his heart. "Yu Yuan, can you use your soul thought to enter the dragon beheading platform again? I feel that the changes inside the dragon beheading platform are not as simple as reopening the galaxy crossing." Chen Qinghuang, who had been silent for a long time, sneered at this moment. His laughter was filled with cold mockery, as if it was directed at everyone. "The darkness of absolute frost is shrinking. The dark realm cold energy that enveloped Fernan, the Lin family girl, and the stone tower is retreating like the tide. Those dark realm Azuras that seem to have stepped into the thousand-bird realm earlier are not real. It's more like a rich flesh aura is wearing Azura armor. I think that those are blood puppets that the great demon god Grek created with the secret arts of the blood demons." Zhongli de Pan, Beirut, Lulu, Junchen, and the other experts of various realms were originally staring at the darkness that was so thick that it couldn't be dispersed. Now, the darkness that was crazily spreading outside was rapidly returning to the stone tower, which surprised them. In addition to being surprised, they also felt a strong sense of unease. Whether it was the Shura of Gojoseon or the great demon god Grek, they were not people who would give up easily. Once the war started, the two of them would not end it hastily. If they didn't set off a storm of blood that swept across a star system, how could they live up to the cruel reputation of the Shura of Gojoseon and the cruel reputation of the blood demon race's high chieftain? Whoosh, whoosh. In front of the stone tower that was hidden in the darkness, Azura General Fernan panted heavily. He leaned weakly against the stone wall and slowly collapsed. His mind was blank, and he was in a great sense of emptiness and loss. He reluctantly watched the darkness of absolute cold disappear into Lin Zhuyun's body. He wondered if he had just had a dream. Of course, the dream was fake. The dark domain cold well that was built inside Lin Zhuyun's body was fake. The powerful Azuras of the dark domain were obviously fake as well. Was even the king's voice fake? Who was it that had fooled everyone, including him? Oh! Lin Zhuyun, who was in the cultivation room of the tower, appeared very soft. She fell to the ground and trembled slightly. Her body and soul were still wandering in the absolute cold darkness, unable to gather her consciousness. She only knew that a power she could not resist had used her as a carrier to create a farce. It really was an accident. She and Fernan are two pitiful flags. They don't even know what the plot is. President Lee sighed. He was still trying to figure out what was going on. Suddenly, all the rank 9 bloodline foreign race experts, great demons, and Freedom Realm cultivators like Jun Chun immediately smelled another turbulent spatial power erupting from the lair of death. Accompanying the spatial power was the familiar absolute cold of darkness, the dark domain power. Heaven-splitting divine stone. Dragon beheading platform. The experts of the foreign races and the great cultivators of the vast heaven and earth called out different names and hurriedly rushed towards the deep pit. Retreat. Away from the lair of death. Faith! What are you doing? The foreign race guest who was praising the Void Spirit Great Elder just a moment ago pointed at her and shouted angrily. Everyone retreated. Yu Yuan turned his head and looked at Luo Yu, and Ziqing, and Old Qian. He said, "Take Wen Lu and leave this lair of death immediately. Faith of the Void Spirit is with the Shura of Gojoseon and the great demon god Grek." Lin Zhuyun's side is fake. The real dark domain cold well has been activated because of Consort Han. He understood everything. Lin Zhuyun was just a cover. The so-called descent of the dark domain Azura and the appearance of the Shura of Gojoseon were all set up by Grek and Shura of Gojoseon. The real dark domain cold well had always been with concubine Han, inside the dragon beheading platform. The dark domain cold well wanted to connect to the dark domain and pour the absolute cold and darkness from the dark domain to the thousand-bird realm. It was not something Lin Zhuyun could accomplish. In addition to Consort Han successfully refining and building the dark domain cold well, she also needed the lair of death and the dragon beheading platform. Inside the dragon beheading platform, there was the corpse of the level 10 frost dragon and the residual power of the level 10 spacetime dragon. The dark domain cold well, the lair of death, and the dragon beheading platform. The three combined could truly realize the plan of the Shura of Gojoseon and Grek. Faith should have been secretly persuaded by the Shura of Gojoseon and Grek. She represented the Void Spirit race and stood in their camp to obtain the dragon beheading platform. When Yu Yuan realized the truth, although he was shocked, he could not think of a way to resolve it. In the inner realm, there was the Shura of Gojoseon, the dark domain Azura who was about to descend, and perhaps the great demon god Grek and Faith who had obtained the dragon beheading platform. In the outer realm, there was the Chaos Kuan and many mutated monsters. No matter how one looked at it, there was no chance of winning this battle. Sorry. Faith, who was floating in the lair, held the heaven-splitting divine stone with both hands and explained to Yu Yuan, "This divine stone is of great significance to my race. You have the Chamber of Commerce and the Shunhun sect behind you. I know very well that if we want to obtain the heaven-splitting divine stone, we can only ask for the help of Grek and the Shura of Gojoseon. The third heaven-splitting divine stone is in Howran and is used to suppress the dragon race's providence. Whether it is the Shunhun sect or the 5 supreme forces of Howran, they will not allow the heaven-splitting divine stone to be moved away from the peak of the dragon vein. Grek and the Shura of Gojoseon are determined to flatten Howran. Only their thoughts and actions can help us obtain the third heaven-splitting divine stone. Therefore, I represent the Void Spirit race and form an alliance with them." Fei Shui's train of thought was clear, and she told Yu Yuan why she had done this. After she finished speaking, Yu Yuan did not even need to think to understand. She did this for her race and for the Void Spirit. Her choice was understandable, but it hurt her own interests and caused her to lose a treasure. Chapter 1091. In the dark stone tower, Lin Zhuyun groaned softly, as if she had just woken up from a long nightmare. She tried to move her limbs. With crisp, crackling sounds, cold crystals the size of fingernails merged with her flesh and blood, like the most nourishing snow lotuses in the world, helping her rebuild her body. A wisp of her mind entered her small world of chi and blood. She could see that the frozen chi and blood seemed to have been completely refined. The problem of her weak body that had troubled her for many years was solved because of the cold crystals. In the early years, all the remaining evil thoughts of the extreme cold heavenly demon that had tried to devour her body were frozen and cracked, turning into balls of memory light that merged with her own spirit, heavenly soul, and main soul. She, who had survived the disaster, slowly found that her condition was improving at an astonishing speed. She even had a feeling that as long as she obtained more icy soul-cold crystals, she would be able to refine her yang spirit body and achieve the ideal state she had dreamed of. Because of that terrifying nightmare, all of his shortcomings and flaws had been cleansed and remolded, as if he had been reborn. A strange chuckle sounded from the lake in her heart. That voice came from the Chaos Koan, a star behemoth. She had heard it countless times when she was in the Howran Great World. So, not long after, she sat up straight and learned the cause and effect. The mottled blood chi she had absorbed from the wreckage of the battleships in the magnificent palace of the giant spirit race contained the hidden power of the current patriarch of the blood demon race, Grek. In addition, there was also a cold power that Shura of Gojosian had secretly given her. In the depths of the universe, the two supreme experts had joined forces and used her as a carrier to create a grand farce in the thousand-bird realm, fooling everyone in the thousand-bird realm. And she had benefited from the disaster. The remaining weak power of Shura of Gojosian was enough for her to forge a yang spirit body in the near future. In the world, Grek, who was best at using the power of flesh and blood, had also left some power to help her cleanse her bones and bones, changing the drawbacks of her weak body and laying a new foundation for her advancement. Behind the gifts from Shura of Gojosian and Grek, of course, there was the shadow of the Chaos Koan. She felt something and suddenly looked up. At this moment, her gaze seemed to penetrate the ice realm wall and see the Chaos Koan outside. This girl is not bad. On a floating meteor in the outer realm, the Chaos Koan that had turned into a skinny old man praised Lin Zhuyun to the Een Corpse King. She is a promising talent. I will observe her for a while longer. This meteorite was the one where he and the Een Corpse King had traveled through the galaxy. It was as wide as a continent and had a strange ocean that looked like the starry Ash Sea region. Many otherworldlings with lifeless eyes and wreathed in corpse aura charged out of the islands in the sea like an army. Some of these Een corpses were human cultivators, while some were great demons. However, most of them were warriors of various races. Most of them were at level 7 or level 8. Among them were a small number of 9th-grade bloodline experts. There were also many corpses of various races that replaced the original Een corpses and were thrown into the burial grounds on the island. After the Chaos Koan slaughtered the members of various races that were scattered in the outer realm, the valuable ones were all inside. The Een corpses outside and the mutated monsters entrenched in the gray withered trees did not interfere with each other. They clearly distanced themselves from each other and were all approaching the thousand-bird realm. At this moment, thousands of mutated monsters had red eyes. This meant that all the mutated monsters had been corroded by the great demon god Grek and had become his blood puppets. They could rampage through the world with his will. The Chaos Koan knew very well that the great demon god was also residing in one of the mutated monsters. He was just not sure which one it was. Shura of Gojosian and many dark domain Azuras are in the realm, and the thousand-bird realm has been corroded by the dark domain's cold energy. Outside, there is the great demon god Grek and the army formed by these mutated monsters. There is also you, Master, and the Een corpses that I refined. The Een Corpse King shook his head. The undying bird's nest of death has become a passage to the dark domain. The experts of the Shenhun sect cannot arrive in an instant. Right now, I can't think of any way for the Chamber of Commerce and the Shunhun sect to stop the people of the Thousand Bird Realm from dying. You can never underestimate the Shunhun sect, the Chaos Koan said seriously. The Een Corpse King was stunned. You haven't experienced the era when the 5 divine kings dominated the galaxy. You can't imagine how terrifying those divine kings are. Speaking of this, the Chaos Koan narrowed his eyes. Look, I still haven't gone to the Thousand Bird Realm. Why is that? I still don't have confidence. Just as President Li, Zhongli de Pan, Jun Chen, Great Demon Lulu, and the other level 9 experts of the foreign races were heading toward the Death Nest. The weaker members of the various races, who had gathered at the Lair of Death under President Li's instructions, were also retreating. This was because the Death Nest that had been repaired by Chen Qinghuang and Yu Yuan had been submerged in the dense cold darkness. The rolling cold energy of the dark domain was like roaring black dragons that rushed in all directions. Roar! Tall, armored Asuras of the dark domain walked out of the darkness, roaring like ferocious beasts. They were not like before, hiding in the darkness and not showing themselves. Instead, they stood in the area outside the Death Nest. Outside the surging dark cold currents, they held huge sabers, double-edged axes, and 2 to 3 meter long lightning spears. Every Asura of the dark domain, be it rank 9 bloodline or rank 8, exuded a cold, murderous aura that was as thick as ever. Kill! This time, there was no Shura of Gojoseon persuading them to surrender. All the Asura who stepped into this realm swung their sabers at the first moment. Their attitude showed that Shura of Gojoseon, whose dignified and deep voice had resounded throughout the Thousand Bird Realm, had never thought of letting the matter rest. It did not mean that Shura of Gojoseon would forgive them just because they had swung their sabers at the great cultivators of the human race and the vast number of great demons. He had already descended and was going to severely punish all the traitors who dared to accept the invitation of the Chamber of Commerce and the Shunhun sect and enter the Thousand Bird Realm. The bloody battle had begun in an instant. Yu Yuan, who had ordered Luoyu, Qian Lao, and Wen Lu to retreat, glared at the darkness with hatred in her eyes. However, she couldn't find any trace of Fei Shui. He knew that Shura of Gojoseon and Fei Shui's plan had succeeded. Consort Han had successfully refined and built the Dark Domain Cold Well. The cold energy and spacetime energy hidden in the Dragon Beheading Platform had also connected the Dark Domain and the Thousand Bird Realm. He could no longer feel the aura of the Dragon Beheading Platform. Chen Qinghuang, with a complicated expression, he looked at Princess Qing Luan, who was the closest to him and had always maintained her composure. I only want to ask, are you involved in this matter? Are you the same as Fei Shui? Do you also have a secret agreement with Shura of Gojoseon and Grek? He couldn't help but suspect. Without him returning to the Thousand Bird Realm, Consort Han, who was in the Dragon Beheading Platform, and the originally shattered, Dark Domain Cold Well, naturally wouldn't be able to come, and the real passage wouldn't be able to be opened. Chen Qinghuang had tried to persuade him several times and confirmed his choice time and time again. At this moment, he even felt that it was another method of bewitchment and enticement. I didn't participate. This has nothing to do with me. I'm also surprised. Princess Qing Luan's face under the curtain of the Phoenix Crown seemed to have changed a little. Her indifferent voice seemed to contain a trace of anger. She waved her hand and used her actions to prove it. Flames of destruction. The destruction fortress driven by the bandits of the winged race floated into the sky from somewhere and scattered clusters of flames from the fortress. Many rank 8 Asura warriors who had just charged out of the Dark Realm were suddenly wrapped in flames. The Asuras from the Dark Realm were forced to retreat into the thick darkness and extreme cold. They used the cold energy of the Dark Realm to extinguish the flames, but they still screamed in pain. I will kill the Asuras because they didn't inform me that they were using my lair of death. Chen Qinghuang slowly rose into the air and flew towards the destruction fortress. He pointed at Wenlu, Old Tong, and the others. You are the people Yu Yuan has designated. I will receive them. I will do my best to ensure their safety. Yu Yuan went blank for a moment before hurriedly saying, Luo Yu, Wenlu, and Ziqing listened to her and entered the fortress. He instinctively believed that the fortress that carried the destruction lair should be able to resist the cold energy of the dark realm to a certain extent. It should be safer than other places. Listen to him. Luo Yu grabbed Wenlu and shot towards the destruction fortress like a rainbow. I won't go and rescue the outsiders who have been invited here by the Chamber of Commerce and the Divine Soul Sect. Chen Qinghuang kept waving his hand and guiding Wenlu, Old Tong, and the others with streaks of light. Because I want to see them die here. I have inherited and comprehended the three great powers of the immortal bird. The immortal bird was chased to this domain by the joint efforts of the rank 10 experts of their race, and killed in Thousand Bird Realm. Regardless of whether she can come back to life or not, I know her long-cherished wish. She wants the descendants of the various races who besieged her and killed her to die where she died. Princess Qing Luan coldly stated her thoughts. The immortal bird from 100,000 years ago had been besieged and killed by the peak rank 10 bloodline experts of the various races. She was the successor. What she had comprehended and obtained were the three great inheritances of the immortal bird. She was going to follow the immortal bird's wish and eliminate the foreign elites in front of her. Whoosh! Whoosh whoosh! The enormous gray withered trees seemed to have received tacit approval when they hit the icy realm barrier of Thousand Bird Realm. As a layer of icy light rippled, the gray withered trees appeared inside Thousand Bird Realm as if they had passed through a curtain of water. Soon after, a dense group of mutated monsters with red eyes left the withered branches and fell like meteors. A group of mutated monsters. Heavens! There are so many of them, and they're not fighting each other. The red light in their eyes means that they've been tamed by the great demon god Grek and turned into blood puppets. We're done for. Damnable Fisher. Amidst the clamor, Yu Yuan saw the mutated monsters suddenly landing near him and charging at him without regard for anything else. The red light in the eyes of the mutated monsters made Yu Yuan feel as if the great demon god Grek was secretly watching him. I can only fight to the death. Without thinking, Yu Yuan took off Gendo's blood prison and held it with both hands. As the life altar activated, flesh and blood energy surged into Gendo like a flood. The demonic saber immediately glowed with blood-red light. Countless blood-red souls roared, making Yu Yuan, the master of the saber, feel dizzy. He didn't use any moves or fixed technique. He just subconsciously swung the blade at the incoming mutated monsters. Rivers of blood-red light were formed, wrapping up a few level 7 bloodline warriors. Along with the blood-red light, bone-cracking sounds, those mutant demons seemed to be gnawed by ferocious blood beasts. Their bones and flesh were chewed, and then disappeared without a trace. Meanwhile, Yu Yuan, who was holding the demon's saber tightly, sensed that a few more spots of blood-colored light had appeared in the blood prison inside the saber. Chapter 1092. And Ziqing, Wenlu, Elena, Old Copper Qian, Luo Yu and the others were standing on top of the Fortress of Destruction. They were all led up by the Green Phoenix Empress. At this moment they were all looking down. Chen Qinghuang was separated from them. She was watching the fierce battle below closely from a corner of the fortress. The Asuras that came out of the absolute cold darkness were all at rank 7, rank 8 and rank 9. However, the combat power that those rank 7 Asuras displayed surprised her greatly. Elena! Chen Qinghuang shouted. The Asura girl who was also brought to the fortress immediately walked to her side. Why are those Asuras so powerful? She pointed at the Asuras who were fighting the son of the forest, Kennard, and putting the rank 8 dark spirit race clansmen in danger. At this time, the entire territory of Thousand Bird Realm had become a battlefield. The Asuras who came out of the darkness and the mutated monsters who descended from the sky would attack all living beings except each other. Kennard, the son of the forest, led by Kelt and Mia, and some dark spirit clansmen who obeyed Mia and hadn't been expelled, entered a dense forest of Thousand Bird Realm. They relied on the tall ancient trees and many plants to fight the Asura warriors and mutated monsters. The dark spirit clansmen's strength would increase when they fought in the forest. Mia and Kelt were attacked by a rank 9 platinum Asura of Dark Realm. They were covered in wounds and had no time to care about Kennard. 4 Asuras stepped out of the darkness. They wore jade-like armor and wore similar masks on their faces. The 4 young Asura clansmen with only rank 7 bloodline held spears, silver spears, and sabers. Their auras were cold, and they forced Kennard to retreat into the forest. He was even hit by the spears and spears. If Kennard's clothes hadn't gathered refined wood energy and turned it into a shield of light, Kennard wouldn't have been able to withstand it. They are not the same as us. Elena took a glance and said with complicated feelings, they are Asuras born in the dark domain. They are born to adapt to the harsh environment in the dark domain, and their battle prowess is naturally stronger than Asuras of the same bloodline outside. However, they live in Dark Realm and grow up in Dark Realm, so their lifespans are much shorter. Shorter lifespans? Chen Qinghuang was shocked. The Asuras of Dark Realm only have a third of the lifespan of Asuras of the outside world. In this short life, they have to improve their bloodline as quickly as possible and become as strong as possible. Otherwise, their lifespans will not be increased, and they will die even earlier. Elena sighed softly. The Asuras of Dark Realm are not even 1% of the Asura race. The Asuras of the Asuras who live in the outside world only go to Dark Realm to temper themselves. After the training is over, I will still leave. It is unlikely that I will stay in the Dark Domain all year round. Even though we Asuras were born in the Dark Realm, what we've been doing all this time is to break free from the influence of the Dark Realm. As she spoke, her eyes searched around and soon locked onto her father, Fernand. At this moment, Fernand was standing in front of Lin Juyun's stone pavilion like a statue. As if he had received some kind of order, Fernand didn't participate in this fierce battle, nor did he move. Asuras are indeed one of the most unique outsider races in this world. Chen Qinghuang nodded slightly. She, who had already regarded the Shura of Gojoseon and the great demon god Grek as her imaginary enemies, wanted to learn as much as possible about the Asuras and the Blood Devils. Gerlin, do you sense any familiar auras from those mutant outsiders? She couldn't help but look at Yu Yuan, who was swinging the demonic blade Blood Prison, and killing the mutated monsters. I vaguely remember that there is a way to refine blood slaves to fight for you in the Blood God sect's secret arts, right? Grek's blood puppets are much more powerful than the blood thralls we refine, and Ziqing answered reluctantly. After entering the depths of the Starry River, learning about the Blood Devil's characteristics, and witnessing Grek's abilities, she had a new opinion in the depths of her heart. She also believed that the Blood God and the Blood Devils, the most unique outsider heavenly devils, had a deep connection. However, she still didn't want to admit it. That was because the Blood Devils had a long history. If there was a connection between them, then it could only be that the Blood God's secret arts had originated from the Blood Devils. Whoosh! Ghost King Chuling, who was dressed like a child emperor, suddenly appeared and stood beside Ziqing. Dressed in a black dragon robe, he seemed to know Chen Qinghuang. He didn't greet Chen Qinghuang when he arrived at the perishing fortress. Long time no see. It was Chen Qinghuang who spoke first. You're becoming more and more extraordinary. Even I can't see through your strength and cultivation anymore, Ghost King Chuling said with a grin. You know each other? And Ziqing asked curiously. Yes. Not long after I formed my Een soul, I traveled to the Land of Terror. The unique aura of an emperor hidden in my own soul attracted Senior Chuling's attention. Chen Qinghuang didn't hide anything. Senior Chuling took care of me a lot in the Land of Terror. I've always remembered that. She knew Ghost King Chuling's background. This Ghost King, who always looked like a child, was indeed an emperor of the mortal world. After his father died, Chuling was forcefully pushed to the throne at a young age. At that time, he was in his current form. He wore an emperor's robe. Unfortunately, he was too young and weak at the time. He was quickly murdered. Before he could sit on the throne, he was poisoned to death by the general who killed his father. After his death, his soul was taken to the Land of Terror by an outsider. A few hundred years later, he became Ghost King Chuling. The general who killed him and his father was also a cultivator. Not long after Chuling became a ghost, he secretly left and slaughtered the general and his family overnight. Thank you for helping in Ziqing. Ghost King Chuling sensed the power hidden in the perishing fortress and looked at the barrier of Thousand Bird Realm. He said, I hope you can protect her. I'll do my best. Chen Qinghuang nodded. After a moment of hesitation, she explained, the perishing fortress under our feet can break through the barrier and enter the outer realms. However, I don't think the outer realms are safer than the inner realms. The primal chaos Kuan is outside, and the great demon god Grek is very likely outside right now. I understand. Chuling expressed his understanding. His strange eyes seemed to be able to see through many secrets. Even the Shura of Gojoseon hasn't come in person. I have a feeling that the primal chaos Kuan, Grek, and the Shura of Gojoseon are quietly watching. They aren't ready to come in person. What are they afraid of? Elena was surprised. In her mind, the king of her race, the great demon god Grek, was invincible. The legend of the primal chaos Kuan had been passed down for generations. There was nothing to worry about in Thousand Bird Realm, so why didn't they dare to come? What are they afraid of? Of course they're afraid of the God King. Ghost King Chuling sneered. Little girl, you have to know that the Howran humans and great demons have been the most terrifying existences in the universe for almost 10,000 years. Back in the golden age of the Divine Soul Sect, every single God King was stronger than the three you've mentioned. But the nest has been flooded by the cold power of the Dark Realm, Elena said softly. There are no absolutes in the world. Chen Qinghuang suddenly said, I also have a bad feeling, so I'll wait and see. I won't get involved for now. You are not from the Shenhun sect, nor are you from the Chamber of Commerce. Come with me and see how they perform in the future. Let's see what they have up their sleeves. I just want to watch my father and Yu Yuan. Elena snorted. Yu Yuan. Chen Qinghuang lowered her head and looked at the long rivers of blood. She watched as the mutated monsters died in an instant. He seems to have finally met a decent opponent. Ah! Luo Yu, Wenlu, Elena, and Old Qian looked down and exclaimed in unison. On the cruel battlefield below. Holding the saber with both hands, Yu Yuan drew a blood-red light river in the air and cut the three monsters into pieces. The flesh of the monsters fell into the bloody river and was instantly corroded. They became the new source of power for Gendo's blood prison and made Gendo even more brilliant. At the same time, the life altar inside Yu Yuan's body spun rapidly, and with the help of the evil fiend body tempering art, the magnetic field formed with him at the center took the opportunity to devour the pure and rich blood aura. After the blood energy entered his body, it was washed and refined slightly and scattered into his organs and bones, making up for the loss. Moreover, there was a slight surplus. The violent desire to kill in his body boiled like boiling water. His eyes were dark red. He became one with Gendo, and became more and more compatible with it. Gendo became a part of his body, and could be controlled by him at will. His mind moved slightly. The demonic blade flew out of his hand, drawing a beautiful blood-red arc in front of him, creating a blood-red purgatory, easily killing the 6 mutated demons. Chuckling, Yu Yuan started to thank Chen Qinghuang. Without his confidence, he might not have bought this Zhendo. After truly controlling Zhendo, he realized that the previous 7 owners of this blade probably died for some reason. The demonic saber blood prison could devour the flesh, blood, and bones of all enemies in battle, causing even more blood souls and countless bloody sparks to surge out of the demonic saber. These were the reasons why Zhendo was so strong. In other words, as the battle progressed, as the slaughter continued, Zhendo would continuously increase its strength and accumulate more blood energy, causing all the blood souls and bloody sparks to become even more terrifying. At this time, the owner of the blade was using their own blood essence. The owner had to continuously pour in their own blood essence to unleash Zhendo's strength. As time passed, the wielder would use up more and more blood energy, and the wielder would become weak and tired. If the battle dragged on indefinitely, then the wielder would one day run out of blood energy. Zhendo, on the other hand, would not weaken. It would only become more terrifying through battle and slaughter. In the end, the strength of the two sides was not equal. Zhendo would turn on its owner, and the chances of success were high. They will be devoured by the demonic blade, but I won't. Yu Yuan grinned and laughed as he took back Zhendo. He casually cut off the arm of a rank 8 bloodline Dark Domain Azura behind him. The Dark Realm Azura, who had lost his arm, looked calm from the intense pain in his eyes. As if he did not feel the pain, he watched the severed arm being swallowed by Zhendo. He used frost energy to freeze the wound and stop the blood from flowing out. He looked deeply at Yu Yuan and then turned to leave. Very smart. Yu Yuan nodded. She narrowed her eyes and sensed for a moment. She discovered that the severed arm did not form a new blood-colored light within the demonic blade. Instead, it was devoured by a cluster of blood souls. That blood soul was one of the masters of the Goblin Temple. It was once a powerful Azura warrior. You are becoming stronger. You are continuously increasing your strength. So am I. He looked at Zhendo in his hand and the dense blood patterns on the blade. He felt the countless bloody sparks hidden inside the blade. My life altar and my fiend body refinement art allow me to continuously absorb the essence of flesh and blood through battle. The more I fight, the stronger I become. You want to turn on me while I am weak? I'm afraid there is no hope. A Tenjong tall mutated monster of the giant spirit clan rushed over like a collapsing mountain. Its target was Shi Yan. Chapter 1093. Yu Yuan wielded his saber with both hands and swung it at the titan that was swinging its arms at him. Zlotsla! The long, dark red saber light that looked like a waterfall created a series of sparks as it struck the titan's arms, which were as thick as ancient trees. However, it failed to cut through its skin. The gigantic devilish spirit's body was wrapped in a set of ancient, ragged battle armor. However, his exposed flesh was as tough as an iron wall, while his bulging muscles looked like lumps of iron. Zhendo's blood prison wasn't known for its sharpness. Instead, it targeted living beings with flesh and blood. Most of the saber light it unleashed would condense into rivers of blood that would pull the living beings with flesh and blood into them, devouring and tearing them apart. However, when Yu Yuan swung his saber at the titan, he only managed to create a streak of saber light that couldn't cut through its skin. His expression flickered slightly as he realized that he had run into a tough opponent. After stomping the ground, Yu Yuan instantly moved hundreds of meters away with his saber and disappeared from the area that the titan had locked onto. Crack! The titan raised its arms and swung them at Nyetian. In the end, its elbows dug into the ground and left 2 large holes in the ground. After failing to kill its target, the titan rose to its feet and locked onto Yu Yuan again, its eyes flashing with red light. To Yu Yuan's disbelief, the 100-meter-tall gigantic monster suddenly began to shrink its body, and within a very short time, it had become much shorter. It seemed to know that its large body would make it easy for Yu Yuan to escape. "You can do this?" Yu Yuan was dumbfounded. Then, he carefully examined this mutant titan that had obviously locked onto him. He noticed that when this titan had charged towards him, all of the other mutant titans had taken the initiative to avoid it and give up on attacking him. This meant that the other mutant titans were aware of how terrifying this titan was. Therefore, he secretly circulated his flesh aura and soul awareness to sense and investigate. However, he discovered that he couldn't determine the grade of this titan's bloodline when it was alive. "He's different from the other giant beings. He's a titan spirit." 9-star Sage Beirut wielded a giant star wheel that seemed to be spinning with a dazzling galaxy. He was fighting against a platinum Azura hidden in absolute darkness. Liao of the Star Tribe, Baker, and more than 10 members of the Star Tribe scattered behind him. A team of the Star Race was fighting against the Shura warriors who entered and exited the Dark Moon Cold Current. Beirut retreated slightly into the air behind him, as if he was stepping on the stars in the sky. He looked like a legendary god who controlled the constellations of the universe. With his back facing Yu Yuan, he explained, "The first Titans were born because of the Titanspinosaurus. They were also known as the Titans. The members of the giant spirit clan are following the trend of the times. Generation after generation, they have become much smaller. However, the taller the giant spirit, the purer the ancient bloodline in its body. The Titan spirit you're facing now should be the third generation. The first generation of Titan spirits were thousands of feet tall. Each of them was like a towering mountain. The second generation of Titan spirits were thousands of feet tall. The third generation of Titan spirits, your current opponent, is only 10 feet tall. Right now, the giant spirit clansmen active in the universe are the 5th and 6th generation. Their bloodline has deteriorated greatly. It is difficult for them to even produce a rank 10 bloodline expert. As a result, the giant spirit race is no longer the first class of intelligent beings." Beirut paused slightly. He pulled with his hands, and another galaxy of stars fell towards the platinum Azura in the darkness, forcing him to not step out immediately. The first and second generation of Titan spirits were born with great strength. They could move mountains and seas and cross the universe. He spoke faster as if he could feel the platinum Azura gathering power. Unfortunately, their movements were slow, and their bloodline eruptions were stagnant. None of them had reached rank 10 bloodline. The most terrifying era was the third generation of Titan spirits. They were 10 feet tall, and their strength, speed, and bloodline were the most balanced. The most glorious era of the giant spirit race was when the third generation of Titan spirits appeared in large numbers. Most of the rank 10 bloodline experts of the giant spirit race came from the third generation of Titan spirit. According to historical records, the one you are facing right now should be a Titan spirit who failed to break through to the final stage. He had stepped into rank 10 bloodline for a short period of time. Because he could not endure the sudden surge of power, he died. When Beirut finished speaking, the third-generation Titan spirit had shrunk to only 10 feet tall. This mutated monster that looked like it was made of refined iron appeared in front of Yu Yuan in an instant, and punched towards the top of Yu Yuan's head. Bang! The heavenly constellation shield appeared in response. The greenish-black energy screen was deformed by the punch. An earth-shattering, heaven-rending, earth-shattering force pierced through the energy shield and exploded madly in the magnetic field Yu Yuan had created with the evil demon body refining art. Yu Yuan's flesh split open. He felt as if he had been hit by a 10,000-ton war chariot. He knew this was bad and was about to escape with a secret movement technique. At this time, the giant monster punched again. The heavenly constellation shield, which needed to be charged, could not activate a second round of defense. Bastard! Jean Lapon growled at the right time. The flow of time seemed to slow down. The uncomfortable feeling of space being distorted almost made Yu Yuan spit blood. But he was relieved. Jean Lapon, who was not tall and had a shiny bald head, exploded the space he was in with his fists. With his hands hanging down, the old man's fingers extended past his knees. Like a strong ape, he bared his fangs and grinned strangely at the giant spirit monster. He raised his hand and used half of his arm to block the fist of the giant spirit devil monster. Even though the giant monster had shrunk, it was still several times taller than him. The fist was like an anchor that smashed into his half-meter-long arm. Sparks flew, and the power of the punch was like lightning. He did not move. The ancient, desolate, empty world true art that flowed around him caused space and time to tremble. Leave this guy to me. You can change to another opponent. With his back to Yu Yuan, he raised his head and looked at the gigantic devilish monster. Then, he gave it a gentle push, and it was flung away. He stomped his foot on the ground, and countless cracks appeared on the hard stone floor. In the next moment, he was like a cannonball as he charged towards the giant spirit devil monster. The two of them immediately engaged in close combat. Bursts of metal clashing and the sound of bones colliding resounded like the beating of drums. "Are you okay?" Yu Ying floated over and replaced Jean Lapon. She opened her small hands and slapped the void. Hundreds of fan-like palm prints slapped the dark domain Azura, who had lost an arm, back into the cold current of the dark domain. This gave Yu Yuan more time to adjust. "Grandaunt, I'm fine. Don't worry about me." Yu Yuan jerked the corner of his mouth. He channeled the creation power of the life altar and used wisps of refined blood to heal his wounds. "It's good that you're fine. That giant monster is extraordinarily strong. Don't be rash." Yu Ying glared at him and said, "I just heard that he was the one who led President Li to break through the Golden Sea of Light. He is a Titan spirit who had stepped into rank 10 bloodline for a short time. Even if he is reduced to a monster without intelligence and only knows how to kill, he is not someone you can deal with right now. Also, speaking of this, Yu Ying's face was filled with terror. Martial Uncle Jean Lapon said that the great demon god Grek is very likely to possess him and complete his descent in Thousand Bird Realm. Grek. Hearing this name, Yu Yuan's expression finally changed. He understood that he had been too arrogant. An inexplicable chill suddenly rose in his heart. He abruptly turned around and saw a familiar figure walking unhurriedly from the middle of the mutated monsters, beside the fighting Azuras and experts of other races. Lin Zhuyun. Eyes slightly cold, he narrowed his eyes and looked closely. Gradually, he found that something was wrong. Lin Zhuyun's profound gate acupoints were constantly absorbing extremely cold light. It seemed that her small world of blood was undergoing a miraculous transformation and refining something. She is forging a yang spirit body. At this time, the cauldron soul Yui's thoughts came from the giant cauldron in Yu Yuan's Zhigung acupoint and shook Yu Yuan. Strangely, both the Azuras and the mutated monsters ignored her. She has the presence of dark domain frost energy. The Azura clansmen and the mutated monsters treat her as one of them. The human race and the foreign race experts know that she is just a puppet being used. They do not value her at all, Yui said. Whoosh. In the dark pit where the lair of death was, an icy dark cold well burst out of the darkness like a giant pillar. At the mouth of the well, Consort Han, who looked like a goddess of ice, tried to break free, but was stuck at the waist by the well. She has successfully become a rank 10 fiend devil and is in the Freedom Realm, but... Yui sensed Consort Han's presence and screamed in excitement. Then, she controlled the giant cauldron to come out of Yu Yuan's Zhigung acupoint and reveal her true body at the mouth of the cauldron. She is trapped at the bottom of that dark domain cold well. But why did that well just have to appear at this time? Yu Yuan noticed that his fiancée's heartbeat had sped up because of the appearance of the dark domain cold well. Upon closer inspection, he discovered that Lin Zhuyun's gaze had been fixed on the dark domain frigid well and the trapped concubine Han the moment it had appeared. Suddenly, a thought flashed through Yu Yuan's mind, which made her heart tremble. She blurted out, "The opportunity for her to condense the Yang spirit lies in that well, or in concubine Han." The cauldron soul stilled and then cried out, "That should be the case. Lin Zhuyun may be useless to the Azura race and the great demon god Grek, but she is still an important pawn to the primal chaos Kuan." Yu Yuan's expression changed. Without much hesitation, he said in a low voice, "Get ready to surround her soul. I will destroy her body." As soon as he finished speaking, he drove Gendo's blood prison straight towards Lin Zhuyun. The blade auras that looked like blood-colored rivers were like giant blood snakes that were about to bite Lin Zhuyun into pieces and swallow her whole in the next moment. What a heartless man! He won't even hesitate to kill his own fiancée. When Madame Peach Blossom, who was not far away, saw this scene, she began to mock him in a strange manner. Lin Zhuyun's tone was indifferent. She calmly watched his arrival and said, "I knew it." Chapter 1094. I knew it. Lin Zhuyun's expression was indifferent when she said this. There was no emotion in her eyes. She did not respond. She just calmly watched as Yu Yuan swung his blade at her. It was as if she was ready to be killed. Clang! A diamond-shaped silver shield blocked Yu Yuan's Gendo's blood prison. The surface of the shield was old and simple. The complicated patterns that were modeled with the passage of time suddenly lit up. Yu Yuan's eyes were dazed for a moment. When he got used to the light of the silver shield, he saw Elena's father standing behind the enormous silver shield. Fernand put down the silver shield slightly with complicated feelings, revealing his determined and angular face. He said helplessly, "My apologies. The king ordered me to protect her." The diamond-shaped silver shield blocked Gendo's attack. The snarling blade beams that looked like blood snakes were also stopped. At the same time, a wisp of frigid energy surged out of the shield, blocking Yu Yuan's soul awareness and flesh aura from probing into the shield. The power of blood prison had to come into contact with the flesh and blood of a living being. Gendo's attack did not land on Fernand's body. The bloody beams could not break through the silver shield and show the true power of blood prison. Holding the demon saber, Yu Yuan could feel the blood souls inside the saber roaring crazily, releasing their thirst for blood. However, they could not break through the silver shield. Fernand was a rank 9 bloodline Azura and the king of bandits. It was normal for him to have a holy artifact. Gendo's blood prison was evil, but according to Hauran's rank, it was only a heaven-grade artifact. It was about the same as a foreign race's holy artifact. Fernand, a rank 9 bloodline Azura, was holding a holy artifact. Naturally, it could stop Gendo. Since Gendo could not be used for now, Yu Yuan made other arrangements. Whoosh! The fiendish demon cauldron suddenly flew towards Lin Zhuyun, causing Azura General Fernand's expression to change. He narrowed his eyes and shouted, "Bloodline, Azura's scythe." Scythes refined from pure blood energy unfurled from Fernand's back one after another. Before the fiend demon cauldron even got close, the strange scythes slashed in the direction of the cauldron. Whoosh! A nearby Silver Scale clansman was accidentally injured. Because of the sickle, his body was chopped in half. His chest was filled with blood and broken bones, making the sickle seem even more demonic. At the same time, the cold energy of the dark realm surged from the side to strengthen the scythes. Crack! The scythe slashed towards the large cauldron that was flying through the air. Black magic energy gushed out like ink. Yu Yi, who was at the mouth of the cauldron, frowned slightly. She was just about to summon the fiend demons to fight when she instinctively felt that something was wrong. The cauldron suddenly sped backward, not bothering with the scythe for too long. This was because a ball of dense darkness energy had appeared where the cauldron was floating in the air. It looked like a giant black carpet. Fernand held the diamond-shaped silver shield in one hand and Lin Zhuyun in the other. He flew up and landed on the black carpet, formed by the cold energy of the dark realm. The black carpet swiftly flew away, carrying him and Lin Zhuyun into the depths of the darkness near the death lair. They could no longer sense any movement. The dark realm cold well, that had grown a dozen times larger after charging out of the lair, was still stuck in Consort Han. Consort Han's dark blue eyes flashed with the light of intelligence. She looked at the cauldron and Yue from afar. She seemed to have a lot to say. A fiend demon that had reached the ultimate level possessed the strength of a freedom realm cultivator and the strength of a demon god of the otherworldly demons. They would also awaken their lost memories. In other words, Consort Han now remembered who she was and knew a lot of things. She, the dark realm cold well, and the real well are all opportunities for Lin Zhuyun to condense her yang spirit and break through again. Yue controlled the cauldron and stopped behind Yu Yuan, who was holding Zhendo. She said faintly, her sister was in the Nine Abyss Cold Abyss back then. Later, she went to the Stardust Sea region and possessed Lin Zhuyun. With the help of the Chaos Kuan, Lin Zhuyun turned the tables and completed the refinement of that heavenly demon. Now, she wants to go one step further. She wants to use Consort Han's cold energy refined over the years, and her icy body. She wants to use the possession technique she comprehended to complete the possession. She sees Consort Han's body as the best yang spirit body. She wants to use Consort Han to advance. As soon as he finished speaking, the dark realm cold well that trapped Consort Han fell down and disappeared into the depths of the darkness again. Instead, it was the great elder of the void spirit demon race, Fei Shui. She stepped on the grayish-white long heaven-splitting divine stone and descended from another space-time kingdom like an ancient god. The heaven-splitting divine stone under Fei Shui's feet bloomed with boundless light, releasing a magical power that stabilized space and changed the rules of all things. Teacher, the void spirit girl Bei Ning, who no one cared about, was about to be drowned at the edge of the darkness. She raised her head and looked at the respected great elder of the race. She used a trick to obtain the divine object and stepped on it. She cooperated with the Shura of Gojoseon and the great demon god Grek to complete the invasion of the thousand-bird realm. She watched as the clansmen, elites, and elders of the various races began to die in large numbers. She felt depressed. As the dark realm cold abyss furiously spread, the experts of the other races could only fight and retreat. The Azura warriors who could retreat into the darkness at any time became fiercer as they fought. Every time they returned to the darkness, they could recover their strength in a short time. When they appeared again, they were full of power. Also, there were careless foreign race experts who were pulled into the darkness to fight in the dark realm cold abyss. Those foreign race warriors usually did not have a good ending and were unable to charge out. Enter the darkness, I will take you back to the race. You have done great this time. In the future, when your bloodline reaches rank 9, there will be a seat for you in the elder group. Fei Shui looked kindly at the student in the corner of the darkness and said softly, You contributed a lot to the return of the heaven-splitting divine stone. I will remember it. When the words were said, Bei Ning lowered her head in shame. Not long after, the darkness swallowed her. Do not fight your Azura race opponents in the dark realm cold abyss. Retreat. 100 meters in the air, the great demon Lulu's body appeared. The giant snake body floated in the air like a mountain range. Bright streams that looked like the Milky Way manifested the essence of water and imprisoned many mutated demons. The mutated demons in the rivers could not escape no matter how they roared and struggled. Humph! Another tall platinum Azura stepped out of the darkness and threw a silver spear into the air. The silver spear broke through the air like a bolt of cold lightning. It turned into hundreds of silver lightning bolts midway, piercing the river's Lulu refined and leaving many holes in his mountain-like snake body. Lulu, who had a pair of vertical green eyes, hissed and waved its snake body violently. Terrifying demonic energy spread out, shattering many silver lightning bolts. His giant mouth suddenly bit down on the silver spear. He stared at the azura below and bit down hard. The spear, which was a holy artifact, broke. Lulu shook his body and turned into a thin man. In an instant, he appeared in front of the platinum azura. "Let me have a good fight with you." The broken spear was crushed into pieces in his hand. "Yu Yuan, do you want to come to the Destruction Fortress?" At this time, Princess Qing Luan's voice quietly sounded in Yu Yuan's heart. Yu Yuan looked up and discovered that the enormous fortress of destruction was like a terrifying war machine. It was spitting out rain of light and flames, causing many mutant demonlings and Azura warriors to howl in pain. There were also dark spirit race, banshees, silver scale race, and black scale race who were affected by the rain of light and flames. Chen Qinghuang's figure at the edge of the destruction fortress was unusually clear. The cruel fighting in the thousand-bird realm did not seem to affect her. She did not seem to be worried about her own safety. She was not afraid of any experts who attacked her. The destruction lair turned into an azure luan and was on its way back to Hauran. With her strange connection with the destruction lair, she should be able to escape the thousand-bird realm in an instant and directly move to the destruction lair. With this confidence, she was not afraid of any accident. "There's no need for that." Yu Yuan shook his head. Then, he raised the demon saber-blood prison and charged toward another group of mutated devil beasts. Whoosh! Whoosh whoosh whoosh! Suddenly, a large number of corpses appeared in the sky. Their bodies were surrounded by dense corpse chi as they charged over. Chaos on top of chaos. Chapter 1095. The chaotic situation made Yu Yuan feel even more depressed. After some consideration, he suddenly abandoned the Gendo and used his heaven soul to control it, allowing Gendo's blood prison to freely slaughter some of the weaker mutated monsters. His heavenly soul was connected to the fiendish blade, helping the fiendish blade select its target. He himself flew into the evil demon cauldron and stood at the mouth of the cauldron. He also guided Yuing, the grand aunt of this life, into the cauldron and let it slowly rise into the sky. Not long after, the cauldron was on par with the fortress of destruction. Chen Qinghuang and the two of them looked at each other from afar. Then, they lowered their heads in tacit understanding and looked down at the land of the Thousand Birds realm. Nearly half of the Thousand Birds realm was covered in extreme cold and darkness. The remaining land and air were filled with clansmen of various races, human cultivators, mutated monsters, corpses, and Azura warriors. There was a fierce battle going on everywhere. Every moment there were living beings dying. After calming himself down, Yu Yuan observed the battlefield. Looking at the situation in front of him, he noticed that President Li of the Tongtian Trading Company was only constantly giving orders for everyone to retreat away from the death lair. He did not think of breaking the boundary wall and leading everyone away. The boundary wall that was sparkling and translucent like ice was cold and dense. It was indeed sturdy. However, Yu Yuan did not think that this boundary wall could restrain President Li, travel around, and an expert like Zhong Li Pan. The function of the boundary wall was to restrict foreign clans with level 7 and level 8 bloodlines and cultivators at the Yang spirit realm. From the looks of the current situation, it would not be long before the dark cold energy from the dark domain flooded the entire Thousand Birds realm. At that time, the combat strength of the dark domain Azura would be raised to the extreme. Correspondingly, the combat strength of the other races in the dark domain cold energy would be greatly weakened. Under this situation, the clansmen of the various races in the Thousand Birds realm might not be enough for the dark domain Azura to kill. In addition, there were mutated monsters that were not affected by the dark domain cold energy, and many corpses. President Li is not panicking at all. All of a sudden, Chen Qinghuang's voice rang out from the fortress of destruction next to them. While Yu Yuan was still in shock, she tugged at him with her slender, jade-like hand. The fiendish demon cauldron fell into the fortress. Puzzled, Yu Yuan left the fiendish demon cauldron and stood beside her. He nodded to Ziqing, Luoyu, Elena, and the others, and quietly paid attention to President Li. President Li stood in midair with his hands clasped behind his back as he issued orders. He was directing his clansmen in which direction to evacuate. He also arranged for Zhongli de, Lu Lu, and the others to assist him, so that Bei Lu and the other outsider experts could evacuate in an orderly manner. President Li's expression was calm, and his tone was gentle. Every word he said seemed to have the power to soothe people's hearts. There were clearly many guests who had already died in the Thousand Birds realm and were slaughtered by the Azura and demons. However, those who heard his voice actually instinctively believed that there would definitely be a turn for the better. Yu Yuan watched for a while and also felt that it was strange. He's waiting for something. And Ziqing had been paying attention for a long time. She also noticed something and had her own speculations. I have a feeling that President Li and the Shenhun sect are planning something. What we see right now is only the Shura of Gojoseon, the great demon god Grek, and the Chaos Kun. What we see is their actions. The Shenhun sect and the Tongtian Trading Company haven't shown any power up until now. This clearly doesn't make sense. These next sect masters of the blood god stood gracefully next to Yu Yuan and Chen Qinghuang. Their gem-like eyes shone with breathtaking light. I see a boundless sea of blood outside the realm. It should have been created by the great demon god Grek. As soon as these words were said, Yu Yuan couldn't help but stare at the sparkling boundary wall. But he didn't see anything. It's not just a blood-colored sea. There's also the Chaos Kun. It has already revealed its true body. Chen Qinghuang nodded slightly. His jade-white palm slapped the energy interface of the Fortress of Destruction. A shield of light that seemed to be able to illuminate the scenery outside the galaxy condensed out of thin air. Inside, there was indeed a vast blood-colored sea that was slowly approaching the Thousand Birds realm. Just by looking at the sea of blood from within the shield of light, Yu Yuan felt a chill run down her spine. Even the life altar inside of her was being suppressed by the sea of blood and was about to be devoured by it. Without even thinking, he knew that the great demon god Grek must be in the blood-colored sea. There was also a life altar that Grek was born with, which was similar to the one in his body. Look at this. Chen Qinghuang pointed her slender finger at another part of the light shield. Yu Yuan focused his gaze and found that the scene inside the light shield had suddenly changed. A gigantic fish that was beyond his imagination had appeared. He was lucky to see this giant fish in the starry ash sea. It was the original form of the Chaos Kun. And now, the giant fish in the shield of light was actually slightly larger than the Thousand Birds realm. It seemed that the giant fish could directly swallow the entire Thousand Birds realm into its stomach if it opened its mouth and sucked hard. This is the true body of the Chaos Kun? Elena, Wenlu, Qianlao, and the others looked from afar, their faces full of shock. This is not the strongest form of the Chaos Kun. Princess Qingluan, who had obtained the inheritance of the immortal bird, took a deep breath and said in a tone full of fear, "In part of the ancient memories from the immortal bird that I refined, the strongest form of the Chaos Kun is about 5 times larger than the Thousand Birds realm. At the beginning of the chaos, the battle prowess of star behemoths was often linked to their size. This means that even though the Chaos Kun escaped the seal of the starry ash sea and rushed into the outer realms of the universe, it still couldn't recover all of its lost power. She flicked her finger, and the shield of light in front of her disappeared. Yu Yuan's expression was grim as he thought to himself. Time passed quickly. The cold energy of the dark realm pouring in from the lair of death gradually occupied nearly 2/3 of the Thousand Birds realm's territory. Many outsider nobles and powerful experts had died before they knew it. Kennard, the son of the forest, who Yu Yuan wanted to deal with, was killed by a few Dark Realm Asuras. His guardian, Kelt, was besieged by many mutant demons and corpses. Mia, who was also an elder of the Dark Spirit race, escaped the forest safely because of Junchun. Slowly, too many mutant demons, corpses, and Azura warriors, even outside of the Dark Realm's cold energy, gained an absolute advantage. Surprisingly, the thick darkness where the lair of death was located hadn't covered the sky yet. Fei Shui, the Grand Elder of the Void Spirits, stepped on the heaven-splitting divine stone and knelt down devoutly. She lowered her head and murmured in a language that no one could understand. Boundless divine light spread out from under her feet like ripples. She looked as if she was using the power of the heaven-splitting divine stone to create a new world. How does it feel to have something that belongs to you being played with by her? Tian Tsang, the Ghost King, suddenly appeared in the air outside the Fortress of Destruction. He had summoned the blood spirit altar of the Blue Devils. His tall body was refined from the body of Mingdu. The turbid demon fetus under the altar was surging with chaotic power that made people want to vomit blood. He chuckled, completely oblivious to the impending disaster. "That old hag teased you. Aren't you angry?" he asked. "I don't want to go deep into that darkness," Yu Yuan said impatiently. "I don't want to take risks, so I can't take back the dragon beheading platform." "Someone asked me to tell you something," Tian Tsang said with a smile. Yu Yuan frowned. "What is it?" In the next moment, he saw Tian Tsang's lips move, but no sound came out. He said that even the gods of the Starry River can't take the dragon beheading platform away from you. These words rumbled in Yu Yuan's small world in his sea of awareness like profound thunder from the ninth heaven. The light of memories that had been branded in his nether soul seemed to be forced to explode. A distant aura that had been sealed for thousands of years seemed to want to build a complete, enormous soul form from his nether soul and complete a revival in a sense. Puff! Fei Shui, who was kneeling on the heaven-splitting divine stone, suddenly coughed up a mouthful of blood and passed out. Chapter 1096. The most famous great elder of the Void Spirit clan, Fei Shui, was lying in a pool of her own blood. Not only was she coughing up blood, but blood was also flowing out of her wrinkled skin, which looked old and weak. The blood was light green and mixed with tiny crystals. The crystals were all ethereal, illusory, and connected to the boundary walls of the outer realms. She was lying on the grayish-white, long heaven-splitting divine stone. The divine stone that was born with the Void Spirit looked very ordinary, but it rippled with incomparable divine radiance, stabilizing space and time. However, the divine stone that originated from Fei Shui's ancestor was actually rejecting the blood flowing from her body. Chen Qinghuang, who was in the Fortress of Destruction, and Tian Tsang, who was standing in the void, observed carefully. They could see that from the moment Fei Shui vomited blood and fell to the ground, there was a thin layer of grayish-white light screen that isolated the blood flowing from Fei Shui's body and Fei Shui from the divine stone. It was as if it did not want Fei Shui and her blood to stain the divine stone again. Fei Shui's abnormality gradually attracted everyone's attention. This was because of the consequences of her fainting, everyone had no choice but to pay attention to her. It spread out crazily, and in an extremely short period of time, it covered most of the Thousand Birds realm's sky and earth. The moment Fei Shui fainted, it inexplicably stopped. The absolute cold darkness no longer spread out in all directions at an unstoppable speed. As the dark domain's cold energy spread out, the fierce and domineering aura of the dark domain's Azura army, which had been advancing triumphantly, was slightly restrained. As if they had received a new order, the Azura from the dark domain stopped charging forward. They were all close to the place where the dark domain's cold energy had been submerged, making preparations to attack or retreat. In the air above the death lair, the human world's supreme cultivator, who was like a traveling eccentric, was stunned. Zhou Yu keenly noticed that the spatial ability and cold aura above the lair were rapidly decreasing. President. He, who had been with President Li the entire time, became more and more careful. He paid attention to the changes in the lair's aura and asked in confusion, "What happened?" At this moment, there was only a quarter of the Thousand Birds realm that had not been covered by the dark domain cold energy. With the mutated monsters and Een corpses as the main force, they were still fighting against the clansmen of the various races, the evil cultivators of the Thunder Slaughter sect, and the great demons that had come from afar. Wise people like Beirut, Leo, and Mia were able to catch their breaths because of the Shura's opponent's caution. As they regulated their qi and blood, they took the opportunity to swallow pills or special concoctions while looking at President Li. President Li's expression was as usual. There was no surprise or expectation. He said indifferently, "Every change on the battlefield will affect the overall situation. The current changes seem to be beneficial to us. However, don't let your guard down. Try your best to recover your strength and prepare for a new trial." And Ziqing, Luo Yu, Wenlu, Qian Lao Tong, Yu Ying, and the others in the Fortress of Destruction couldn't help but look at Yu Yuan. Naturally, they didn't hear Tian Tsang's sole thought that was targeted at Yu Yuan. However, they still instinctively felt that Faith's fainting and the strange changes that were happening right now were caused by Yu Yuan. The tall and straight Yu Yuan had his back to them. He was facing the incomparably dark depths and looking at the heaven-splitting divine stone that had left the absolute frost darkness and stopped in midair. At this moment, Yu Yuan's eyes released an indescribably brilliant light. The brilliant light was exactly the same as the heaven-splitting divine stone's ripples. The cauldron soul, Yu Yi, flew out of the pitch-black cauldron and slowly knelt behind Yu Yuan. She placed her right hand in front of her chest and put her palm on her left shoulder. She bowed her head and worshipped Yu Yuan with an ancient ritual that was deeply engraved in her memory. She didn't say a word. Her shoulders just kept trembling. She used her actions to make Ziqing, Luo Yu, and the others suspicious, and made Princess Qing Luan's mysterious eyes shine with an unknown light. No one knew why she, as the soul of the fiend demon cauldron, would treat Yu Yuan in such a way at this moment. The way she treated Yu Yuan right now was completely different from what everyone had seen before. She gave people the feeling that she was worshipping and admiring someone else. With just a dark realm cold well, even Shura of Gojoseon and Sabonis can't flood Thousand Bird Realm with the cold energy of the dark realm in a short time. Tian Tsang chuckled and turned into a handsome man. Dressed in blue, he sat upright on the enormous blood spirit altar. Not to mention, I still have to divert my attention to use the dark domain's cold energy to affect the Thousand Bird Realm's boundary. Without the help of anything else, even with Grek's secret help, he can't do it. Tian Tsang raised his head and pointed at the white, ice-like realm barrier that everyone could see. Earlier, the cold energy of the dark realm that spread out from Lin Zhiyun's body seemed to disappear. In fact, it had secretly flowed into the realm barrier, forming an even stronger defense. Everything they did before was just to prevent the weak from leaving immediately. Later, you saw the lair of death being swallowed by darkness, saw the absolute cold darkness spreading crazily, and saw the true dark realm Azura descend. That's because of the dragon beheading platform. I don't call it the heaven-splitting divine stone, but the dragon beheading platform. That's because if it's just the heaven-splitting divine stone, and not the dragon beheading platform, it doesn't have such power. It's not enough to connect the dark realm and thousand-bird realm. A divine stone is like a piece of divine iron. Divine iron hasn't been forged and tempered into a divine weapon. How can it be sharp enough to cut through all things and the void? If the heaven-splitting divine stone hadn't been refined by that person, who killed many dragon gods and knocked the dragon race off their divine pedestals, it wouldn't have had infinite power to support it. The passage to the dark realm could be opened, because faith borrowed the power left behind by the level 10 dragon of space and time and the level 10 frost dragon in the dragon beheading platform. After being refined by that person's divine power and cleansed by the dragon race, the dragon beheading platform's value far surpasses the original heaven-splitting divine stone. The void spirits don't have any artifacts that can be compared to the current dragon beheading platform. Faith also knows this, which is why she didn't even care about her old face. She would rather offend all the races and join forces with Sabonis and Grek to seize the dragon beheading platform. Tiant Song had exposed the truth that had been buried deeply, the dark truth, without any hesitation. His voice wasn't loud at first, but as he spoke, it became louder and louder. This made it so that not only the people near the Fortress of Destruction, but also the experts of various races below the thousand-bird realm, who hadn't been drowned by the darkness, also heard it. Everyone who heard Tiant Song's voice either looked up at him or remained silent, as if they were listening attentively. Tiant Song smiled as if he was satisfied with everyone's attention, so he continued to speak. Unfortunately, Faith thought that the dragon beheading platform was ownerless and that her void spirit bloodline could use this thing that her ancestor broke out of the cocoon. She took it for granted that Yu Yuan was lucky enough to get the dragon beheading platform because of her former maid. She thought that Yu Yuan didn't get any recognition at all. Tian Song's voice was full of mockery, and his mocking gaze was directed at the unconscious Faith. I think you should have realized the truth by now. Your void spirit bloodline can only use some of the power that originally belonged to the heaven-splitting divine stone. What was engraved, imprinted, and sealed later belonged to that person. You can't shake it in the slightest. The space dragon and the frost dragon died a long time ago, and Yu Yuan took away the residual power that bound the dragon corp. That's why you can use your bloodline to use the heaven-splitting divine stone to move some of it. With your talent and the immortal bird's nest, you can achieve the magnificent feat of connecting the dark realm and the thousand-bird realm. But that's all you can do. Tian Song shook his head and concluded, don't expect too much from something that doesn't belong to you in the first place. Otherwise, you'll be punished. Whoosh! A tall, cold-faced platinum Azura wearing no armor stepped into the air from the darkness where the death lair was. The moment he appeared, all of the dark realm Azuras naturally looked at him. Beirut, Leo, Mia, Canli, and the other outsider experts' expressions flickered slightly as they gasped. Frowning, the Azura came to Faith, who was lying in a pool of blood, and shouted in a low voice. His shout seemed to reverberate inside Faith's body and soul. It contained a miraculous healing power, which allowed Faith to quickly regain consciousness from her unconscious state. Then, after a few groans, she opened her eyes. Yu Qian. Standing in the darkness, he stared at the Ghost King sitting high on the blood spirit altar. You should be fighting alongside us, but you're willing to submit to Howren's mortal enemy. As the most talented heavenly devil seed, don't you feel ashamed? Ashamed. Tian Song slowly rose from his cross-legged state. His body, which was originally no different from a human's, suddenly began to expand as he rose to his feet. After a few breaths, he became as large and towering as the blood spirit altar. His body was dark green, and wisps of the purest Yin-Chi surged inside of him like rivers. The unique aura of the Land of Terror surged out of him like a tidal vortex, striking fear into the souls of the few remaining heavenly devils. When I fought Howren, you were only a child, Hinton. Did you ever set foot in Hauran and be hunted by numerous human grand cultivators and powerful demons? When I dominated the Starry River, you were under Saboni's protection. You didn't even have a chance to fight a real battle. Do you think I'm ashamed? Do you think you're qualified to do that, Hinton? No matter how hard you work, no matter how hard you struggle, you'll only reach your current strength and bloodline level. This is your limit, Hinton. As for your limit, I had already reached it when I entered Vast Expanse. If I hadn't been imprisoned in the forbidden land of the fallen moons, I would have become a great demon god a long time ago, just like Grek. Do you think you're qualified to stand on equal footing with me and order me around? His rebuke caused the Platinum Azura who had stepped out of the darkness to fall silent. The Azura man who didn't wear any armor but had spikes on his body was none other than Hinton, the eldest son of the Shura of Gojosian and Sabonis. He was at the peak of the 9th level and was skilled at commanding armies. Hinton was a talented commander, but his personal strength and potential weren't 1 in a million. However, in the bloodthirsty Azura race, only those with the strongest individual combat strength would be worshipped, revered, and recognized. Only then would they have the qualifications to ascend to the throne of Azura King. Sabonis had said many years ago that his youngest son, who had died in Hauran and was killed by Nyechintian, would be his successor. That person had the potential and qualifications to aspire for the peak of level 10 bloodline. He would also be the new supreme expert after Sabonis, not his eldest son, Hinton. The Shura of Gojosian had never been wrong when it came to his clansman's potential. Therefore, in the eyes of his clansmen, Hinton's bloodline limit was the peak of the 9th level. It was impossible for him to advance any further. This was an indescribable pain in Hinton's heart. However, he worshipped his father from the bottom of his heart and knew that his father wouldn't make a mistake in this regard. After Tiant Song exposed the scars in his heart, he fell silent. He didn't know how great of a storm had been set off in his heart, but his expression didn't change much. He looked at Faith, who was slowly waking up, and said in a low voice, "What happened?" The confusion in Faith's eyes vanished in the blink of an eye, and the light of wisdom reappeared. The elder of the void spirits subconsciously looked around, and in the end, her body trembled slightly as she fixed her gaze on Yuyuan, who was standing at the corner of the Fortress of Destruction. She saw the same light in Yuyuan's eyes that the heaven-splitting divine stone under her feet had released. The faint time power that remained in her body brought her images one after another, along with Tiant Song's words. Time flowed backwards slightly, and she learned everything in an instant. Yuyuan, after a long while, she said the name in a trembling voice. Above the Fortress of Destruction, Yuyuan's tall and straight figure instantly attracted everyone's attention. Everyone also saw Yui, who was worshipping Yuyuan with ancient etiquette behind him. Emperor Heaven Shaking, Green Nightmare, and Hei Sun, who had secretly returned, had strange expressions on their faces. The etiquette was very familiar to them, since they had already sworn allegiance to him. Back then, they had knelt before the owner of the bronze coffin, who had asked them to swear an oath with such etiquette. Boom! The dragon beheading platform shook violently, like a mad dragon trying to break free from its restraints. The strange movement of the dragon subduing platform sent Fei Shui flying into the air. She vomited blood again and again. Her meridians and internal organs were all injured to varying degrees. Hinton's expression flickered as his tall body slammed into the dragon beheading platform like a cannonball. A power that could destroy heaven and earth and tear the void apart erupted from the peak level 9 Platinum Azura's body, pressing down on the violent dragon beheading platform and causing it to sink into the absolute darkness below. Everyone could see Hinton's nervousness and seriousness, as if he was facing a great enemy. The eldest son of Shura of Gojosian knew very well that if this divine stone was allowed to leave, not to mention devouring the 1,000-bird realm, even the path back might be broken. Once the connection between the thousand-bird realm and the dark realm collapsed, there would be no more Azuras to arrive. His father, who was still guarding the dark realm and silently watching the development of the situation, could not arrive in an instant. If the first to arrive did not receive subsequent reinforcements, they would be alone. Chapter 1097. In the small world inside Yu Yuan's sea of consciousness, his Yin spirit was operating in the way of the great Yin spirit art. It was sorting out the light of memories, feeling the wonderful changes in his soul, and observing the strangeness of this strange land. Strange flowing lights gradually flowed out of the Yin spirit. They were moving towards his main soul, which hadn't been truly cleansed and refined. His Yin spirit was refined and evolved from the earth spirit. Moreover, he had cultivated the great Yin spirit art for a long time. It had endless magical effects and hidden a vast amount of soul energy. Although his heaven spirit hadn't transformed into the sun spirit, it was still intelligent and pure because of the refinement of the extreme wisdom soul tempering art. Only his main soul hadn't been baptized by any exquisite soul art. Because his realm wasn't high enough, he didn't have the qualifications to comprehend the mysteries of his main soul and break through to the primordial spirit. However, at this moment, changes began to happen. He knew that the flowing lights that flew out of his Yin spirit came from the dragon beheading platform. His Yin spirit was swimming in it and using the great Yin spirit art to collect it. It was the special ability left behind by the dragon beheading platform. While his mind was in shock, he saw that the most illusory main soul began to change strangely. It was like an incomparably huge soul projection that was infinitely elongated. It was elongated into an illusory soul that seemed to be sitting in the depths of the 9 heavens. It was shining with boundless divinity. He deeply felt that there was a muddy consciousness that had been sealed for thousands of years. It was shackled by layers of chains, like a sea of stars. It seemed that it was slowly waking up. Indescribable palpitations and uneasiness flooded his mind, making his 3 souls tremble. Suddenly, he felt that all the experiences and memories of his previous life were slowly fading away, as if a pair of invisible divine hands were quietly erasing them. In this life, Yu Yuan had many unimportant experiences in his life. His muddle-headed past, where his earth spirit and heaven spirit hadn't returned to him, seemed to be gradually disappearing. Vaguely, he had a feeling, as the main soul turned into a huge illusory soul, it continued to grow. As Hanch in his previous life, and as Yu Yuan in this life, many important memories and experiences would turn into nothingness, because the lives and experiences of these 2 lives couldn't compete with that illusory soul. Also, I still have another life. At this moment, he clearly recognized his other self. He knew why the source of the Yin vein in the Land of Terror had said those words back then. He instantly realized that with his current cultivation and strength, he was unable to endure the awakening of his first reincarnation. The awakening of that him would instantly erase and replace his 2 lives, whether it was the previous Hanch or the current Yu Yuan. Everything would become unimportant and meaningless. In his previous life, the arduous process of him comprehending pharmacology and becoming the drug deity was like a small wave, not worth mentioning. In this life, the many years of muddle-headedness, the many novel adventures and trials were just fleeting illusions. Her best friend in her previous life, Zuan Jining Shuang, who failed to live up to her feelings, suffered persecution and betrayal in her reincarnation. In this life, his identity as a Yu clan disciple, Yuan Lianyao, and Ziqing, and the many battles in the Forbidden Lands were nothing more than a dream to him in his first life. If that was the case, if that me was allowed to awaken, wouldn't the 2 lives of me be meaningless? No. The thoughts of resistance emerged from the depths of his soul. He began to actively resist the awakening of his other self. I am Yu Yuan. I am only Yu Yuan. The current me is the only one, the true me. I am Yu Yuan. I can accept the fact that I was once Hanch, but I am still Yu Yuan, not Hanch. The current me does not have the ability and realm to accept my first reincarnation. I can wait. When I am strong enough to bear the burden of that self, I will awaken that self and accept the past. As he brainwashed himself, he forced himself to stop the rotation of the great Een Soul technique. His Een spirit and Selim soul calmed down as much as possible. His eyes were still shining brightly, but his constantly elongated and gradually strengthened self that wanted to loosen thousands of shackles and awaken also stopped because of this. It was as if the cold energy of the dark domain had stopped spreading outwards. Dragon beheading platform. After an unknown period of time, he mumbled to himself as if in a dream. Boom. Sinton, who had unleashed all of his power to sink the divine stone back into the darkness of absolute frost, was sent flying by the space-time supernatural power. 2 more people and Fernan, come help me! The roar of the eldest son of the Shura of Gojoseon came from the darkness. In the depths of the darkness that no one could see, Fernan, who had become a bandit, and possibly other Platinum Azuras, were working together with Sinton to suppress the dragon beheading platform. In the surging darkness, space crackled as if it could not bear the burden and was about to explode. Many Azura warriors who had come from the dark domain at the edge of the darkness of absolute frost had serious expressions when they heard the strange noise. Their hearts were in their throat. They also understood that once the space in the deepest part of the darkness collapsed, it meant that they could not return. It's Yu Yuan. It really is Yu Yuan. Is this the Shenhun sex plan? Shocked gazes fell on Yu Yuan in unison. The experts of various races, such as Lu Lu and Junchen, who had been observing him, of course knew that it was his muttering that had caused the dragon beheading platform to go crazy, and that this famous divine tool wanted to return to him. He actually obtained the legacy of the dragon beheading platform. Shi Quan, who practiced the withering sword, had a complicated expression on her face as she looked at Yu Yuan, who kept muttering with his head bowed. She felt that he was a stranger. Lady Peach and the voluptuous Thousand Tribulations Ghost King were next to each other. Lady Peach bumped the Thousand Tribulations Ghost King lightly and said with a smile, "See? I bet on the right person, didn't I?" The Thousand Tribulations Ghost King, who used to be the queen bee of the Goblin Temple, gave her a knowing look. "I knew he was extraordinary when I was in the Land of Terror." The Chuling Ghost King held the spirit sealing diagram and secretly cast a secret spell. She shook her head and said softly, "No, something's wrong. The aura is not right." President Junchen, the first guest elder of the Chamber of Commerce, stood side by side with President Li in the air. Many questions were surging in his mind. Zhou Yu, the Death Crane, and Lu Lu also looked at President Li. They all believed that President Li, who had spoken directly with the owner of the bronze coffin many times, must know what was going on and what was going on. President Li smiled and didn't explain. Instead, he looked at the surging darkness and said, "Hinton, I don't think you're strong enough to control the dragon beheading platform." It seemed to be responding to him. The dragon beheading platform, which had sunk into the darkness, rippled with dazzling divine light. The power of time and space surged. The extremely cold energy that didn't belong to the dark realm rushed out of the darkness with the grayish-white divine stone. The divine stone gradually became translucent, as if it contained divine light that looked like flowing clouds. Everyone who looked directly at the dragon beheading platform at this moment felt their souls surging. They felt that they were young for a moment and old for a moment. Their eyes were blurred, as if they were going to die of old age. This was the sign that the space-time power of the dragon beheading platform was becoming more and more chaotic and was about to go out of everyone's control. Whoosh! While everyone was shocked, the dragon beheading platform broke free from the absolute cold darkness of the Dark Realm and flew toward Yu Yuan. All the Asuras of the Dark Realm watched the dragon beheading platform leave with great fear and unease. Fei Shui, the Void Phantom's Grand Elder, kept coughing up blood. She had secretly used all of her remaining power, but she couldn't stop the dragon beheading platform from leaving. She found in despair that there was nothing she could do against the dragon beheading platform formed by the heaven-splitting divine stone. The Shenhun sect is really something. We underestimated the Shenhun sect and President Li. Ha! Amazing! Amazing! Once the passage between the Dark Realm and Thousand Bird Realm explodes, these Asuras who can't return may not be able to beat us. Without the support of the Dark Realm, their combat strength is not unbearably strong. Let's see how they die later. The surviving clansmen stared at the dragon beheading platform and watched it get closer and closer to Yu Yuan. Just as the dragon beheading platform was about to completely break free from the absolute cold darkness, a hand covered in thick calluses appeared out of thin air and grabbed the dragon beheading platform that was flying like lightning. The dragon beheading platform suddenly stopped. Looking behind the hand, everyone saw an ordinary-looking Asura race elder. He wasn't very tall, and he was even shorter than most Asura clansmen. The natural spikes on his shoulders, knees, and elbows had all been broken and then turned into hard armor. The common characteristics of an Asura were very blurry on his body. His clothes were wide, and there weren't any luxurious patterns carved on them. They looked extremely unremarkable. His exposed flesh was covered in scabs, patches and clusters of scars. They were everywhere. It seemed that his body under his clothes was full of scars of battle. Not a single part of his body was intact or smooth. Sabonis, Shura of Gojoseon, Tiantsang, Beirut of the Star Clan, President Li, and Jun Chen were the first to break the deadlock and mention the taboo name after a long silence. Shura of Gojoseon, Sabonis, the strongest of the universe, the hardest bone to chew in the eyes of the nascent divinities and Yao gods of Hauran. King. Our king is mighty. The tsunami-like cheers of the Dark Realm Asuras resounded throughout Thousand Bird Realm. From the darkness, from the mountains, from the rivers, from the destroyed stone palaces, and from the hearts of every Asura clansman. Sabonis wasn't tall, but in the eyes of every Asura, he was an invincible god of war, the most majestic divine mountain. No one could shake him. Fei Shui, Shura of Gojoseon's dignified voice sounded. As soon as he spoke, he grabbed with his hand. The first elder of the Void Spirit tribe suddenly felt the space around her solidify. When she came to her senses, she saw that Sabonis had grabbed her by the neck like a chicken and was dragging her toward the dragon beheading platform. Shura of Gojoseon waved his finger, and Fei Shui turned into pieces of flesh that fell on the dragon slaying platform. A gray light curtain appeared to block Fei Shui's limbs, but he shattered it with a flick of his finger. Then, the pale green blood of the Void Spirits seeped into the dragon-slaying platform. Shura of Gojoseon narrowed his eyes and used Fei Shui's blood to summon the original power of the heaven-splitting divine stone. A moment later, the absolute cold darkness that had stopped spreading crazily earlier surged again, faster than before. Chapter 1098. A terrifying power like the explosion of a galaxy gradually emerged from the body of Shura of Gojoseon Sabonis. Boom! Boom boom boom! Thousand Bird Realm began to shake. The towering mountains suddenly collapsed and shattered. The ground seemed to be pierced by thousands of giant blades, revealing canyons and ravines. Outside the darkness, inside the darkness, the tremors occurred at the same time. Thousand Bird Realm seemed to have stepped on the path of destruction. Shura of Gojoseon Sabonis stood beside the dragon beheading platform. dazzling golden light bloomed from his palm and poured into the platform where Fei Shui's blood was. Suddenly, rare veins of refined gold in the depths of thousand-bird realm condensed into rays of silver lightning. Like a ferocious dragon snake breaking out of the ground, it indiscriminately attacked the mutated monsters, corpses, and the surviving clansmen of various races. In the blink of an eye, many monsters and weak clansmen of various races died because of carelessness. Everyone jumped away from the edge of the darkness, away from the monsters and corpses, and gathered in the increasingly small rocky area. The darkness continued to spread like a black curtain. In an extremely short period of time, only 1/5 of the vast thousand-bird realm had not been drowned by the absolute cold darkness. Because of Saboni's appearance, and because he held the dragon beheading platform, everyone who had just obtained a moment of leisure and relaxed felt as if a bucket of ice water had been poured from head to toe. At this moment, Shura of Gojoseon Sabonis was using Fei Shui's blood as a key to infiltrate his own power into the dragon beheading platform. He used the blood as a guide and used the power of the divine stone itself to continue to draw the power of the spacetime dragon and the frost dragon. In the two small worlds inside the dragon beheading platform, clusters of dark green vortexes suddenly appeared in the air. The vortexes were filled with thousands of golden crystals, silver lightning, and black iron essence. The twisted and chaotic power of time and space, the cold light from the level 10 frost dragon, gave off the rumbling of Tao laws and the strange sound of time and space shattering. The two mysterious forces were pulled by the translucent boundary walls of the two small worlds and slowly merged into the dark green vortex. The so-called boundary wall was the cocoon formed after the void spirit demon broke out. It was the power carried by the Godstone itself, and could only be activated by the blood of the void spirit demon's descendant. At this time, in the depths of the darkness where other life forms couldn't see, only the Azura powerhouses could. Inside the death lair, the space ripples suddenly became turbulent. The membrane that seemed to be formed by the energy of death was instantly broken. Above the nest, Consort Han was still stuck in the dark domain cold well that had expanded more than 10 times. The well, on the other hand, was facing the entrance of the lair of death. The power of the space dragon that had been pulled out by the Shura of Gojoseon Sabonis fused into the tunnel that connected to the dark realm inside the lair. The remaining power of the frost dragon seeped into the dark domain cold well itself, reinforcing this strange well. The entrance of the nest and the well were connected, and the dimensional arcana condensed into one, becoming solid again. The well seemed to be a lighthouse, a spatial coordinate, and an accurate path. Its existence and aura seemed to be constantly emitting light, allowing the Azura of the dark domain to know which direction to follow when crossing the void. Swoosh! All of a sudden, a dark realm Azura in silver armor appeared in the lair. King! As soon as he came, he was searching for Sabonis. When he saw him, he shouted excitedly. Behind him, a murderous aura that even the endless darkness couldn't contain came from the spatial tunnel under the lair, causing all the human cultivators and elders of the various races to change their expressions. Oh no! The moment the 9-star sage Beirut smelled the murderous aura, he was sure that Sabonis hadn't come with an avatar, but with his true body. The Shura of Gojoseon didn't hide anymore. His strongest power, the real him, was in the 1,000-bird realm. Since that thing was already on its way, the Sabonis who had appeared now was naturally the Shura of Gojoseon himself. Boom! A huge golden chariot also broke into the 1,000-bird realm after the dark domain Azura. The monstrous murderous aura leaked into the 1,000-bird realm because this golden chariot was coming, causing many of the divine weapons in this realm to fly into the darkness. A spectacular scene was formed, shocking many who didn't know what was going on. Thousands of divine weapons flew into the endless darkness, like birds chirping happily, wanting to return to their nests. Oh! Old Coin Tong, who was standing in the fortress of destruction, realized that the copper coins embedded in his clothes were suddenly leaving him one by one. He wasn't the only one. Many human cultivators, great demons, and outsiders were holding weapons and holy items, as long as they were made of metal, were pulled into the darkness. There seemed to be a gold-swallowing beast hiding there, swallowing all metal. For a time, there were many screams, gasps, shouts, and the sounds of struggling to control artifacts. The path of gold and jade that Old Coin Tong cultivated was naturally suppressed, and he felt uncomfortable all over. He felt that as long as the golden chariot collided with him, his special yang spirit body would be crushed into pieces of gold and jade, and even his soul would explode. Not to mention fighting Sabonis, just the Shura of Gojoseon's chariot could kill him like killing an ant. At this moment, a sense of loss arose from Yu Yuan's soul. He became a little more clear-headed because he found that Gendo's blood prison was also pulled into the darkness. Gendo was also mixed with refined gold, and it was also a metal object, so it was also affected. When Gendo disappeared into the darkness, all the soul connections between his soul and Gendo were instantly torn apart, and he could no longer sense Gendo's existence and movements. Suddenly, he learned that the Destruction Fortress had been strengthened, and he couldn't help but look at Chen Qinghuang. Chen Qinghuang was indifferent. He didn't feel too emotional because of the appearance of the Shura of Gojoseon. The dark domain that gave birth to the Azura race is so cold that it can freeze a person's soul. That thick darkness to others is so pure. Standing on the blood spirit altar that was just as tall, Tiansong said leisurely, however, the core and essence of the Azura race's bloodline isn't ice power, nor is it darkness power. They can adapt to the darkness and the cold. Some Azura bloodlines have mutated because of this, and can slightly use these two powers. However, the true power of the Azuras is the boundless, murderous power of metal. Every vein of metal in the universe can be used by them. All the divine weapons can be affected by them and go out of control. They are the race that is best at fighting, and their bodies are like the strongest metal weapons. After Tiansong finished speaking, he suddenly looked at President Li with a thoughtful expression. At this moment, the laws and great Daos of Thousand Bird Realm seemed to be twisted by someone and underwent an unfathomable change. All the divine weapons, armors, utensils, and copper coins had sunk into the darkness, but they were pulled by another rule. One by one, they flew out of the absolute cold darkness and went back to their masters. Those who left their hands felt empty and disappointed, but when they saw their familiar companions return, they danced excitedly. A huge golden throne with countless mysterious patterns carved on it slowly floated up into the sky, surrounded by thousands of golden divine lightning bolts. When the throne rose into the sky and exploded with dazzling golden light, it was like a golden sun that had escaped the sea of darkness. It was as if it was going to paint the mountains, rivers, and earth gold, and turn the entire Thousand Bird Realm into a magical world of gold and iron. The great cultivators who had reached the Freedom Realm were like green willows that had already touched the truth of the great Tao. They keenly sensed that the order and rules of this world were changing with the rise of the throne. The old president of the Tongtian Trading Company was sitting on the throne at this moment. His golden eyes released dazzling light. Wherever he looked, even the absolute cold darkness was affected by the great Tao and could not continue to extend outwards. Due to the golden throne floating in midair, the spreading darkness was temporarily blocked by the golden light and stopped in its place. The experts of the various races and the human cultivators, who were afraid that they would be drowned, heaved a sigh of relief. They looked at the Shura of Gojoseon and President Li in shock. One was the current patriarch of the Azura race. His golden chariot was filled with an unparalleled killing aura that almost broke through the realm wall of Thousand Bird Realm and went deep into the ninth heaven star sea. The other was the most ambitious chamber of commerce in the history of the Howran Great World. He was also the one who refined the first golden metal divine mountain in the Howran world. He had failed to reach the nascent soul realm, but he still survived and reached the peak of the freedom realm again. Their competition naturally attracted everyone's attention. Since I've chosen Thousand Bird Realm, the great Tao of this realm has naturally been sorted out by me and can be controlled by me at will. President Li was still calm. He said with a smile, "Even you can't do whatever you want in Thousand Bird Realm. Is that so?" Sabonis chuckled. The next moment, his originally short body suddenly expanded 100 times, turning into an indomitable golden azura that seemed to be made of gold and iron, and in an instant, he fell into the golden chariot. As soon as the golden azura appeared, all the azura warriors from the dark realm raised their arms and cheered. Sabonis, who was standing on the golden chariot, charged out of the darkness. He looked at President Li, who was sitting on the golden throne in the sky above the death lair. His eyes were so cold that they looked like two pools of molten lava that were overflowing with golden flames. The first golden metal divine mountain born in the Howran world has been refined into a throne by you. However, Sabonis dragged out his voice and said, "Unfortunately, your nascent soul ascension failed." When he said this, thousands of gold and silver bolts of lightning flew out of the darkness below him. The metal and metal formed in the depths of the earth were affected by his bloodline power. They merged with dozens of other metals near the lair, and formed a whirlpool that could swallow everything. The thousands of swords, armors, spears, and sharp blades that had just flown into the air surged back into the darkness. Pew! Pew pew! Many people who used their bloodline and soul thought to control the weapons spat out blood and fell to the ground with pale faces. Old Qian Tong was the same. He sat down on the ground. Because he was only in the body of a young spirit, he didn't vomit blood. Instead, he looked at the fine cracks on his chest and cursed, "Are the two of them done? They're fighting with their divine arts and talents. Why do they have to involve others?" Yu Yuan turned to look at him and said, "You're very lucky. Without Her Majesty's protection, you won't be leaving with just a few coins. Your entire body of yang spirit will be affected by Sabonis, and you'll be forced to leave the fortress," Tian Song added. He and Yu Yuan could see that Chen Qinghuang was vigilant and prepared when the copper coins left. When President Li took out the golden throne and officially provoked the Shura of Gojoseon with his arrangements in the Thousand Bird Realm, Chen Qinghuang knew it wasn't that simple. She secretly increased the power of the Fortress of Destruction and blocked the second round of attraction between Sabonis and the Golden Chariot. The Shenhun sect wants to obtain a divine position for President Li? At this time, Chen Qinghuang gradually had some ideas. They want to use the death of the Shura of Gojoseon and Sabonis to pave the way for him to become a god? President Li has no foreign bloodline and was born in Howran. He shouldn't be able to break the rules of the divine position in Howran. What right does the Shenhun sect have? Tian Song was silent. He was only following orders. He didn't know much about the Divine King, so he couldn't answer. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. At the same time, thick blood light pillars pierced through Zhongli Great Plate's 10,000-foot-tall Dharma form, causing the Dharma form of the ancient Baron sect's leader, who seemed to be in a chaotic space and time, to expand and shrink to the size of a mustard seed. It repeatedly resisted the terrifying attack. The giant spirit fiend went from 10 feet tall to 1,000 feet tall. The red light in his eyes was intense. A sea of blood suddenly appeared and entered the depths of his eyes. It was as if a vast amount of blood essence had turned into the giant spirit fiend's power and gave him infinite combat power. Grek, Zhong Lipan, who was as small as a speck of dust, seemed to roar in another time and space. Then, he suddenly appeared in the layers of distorted space. His 1,000-foot-tall Dharma idol was temporarily scattered and revealed in his true form. Gritting his teeth, he looked at the gigantic spirit that was shrinking to the same size as him after breaking through his 3,000-meter-tall Dharma idol. You finally dare to come here? Outside the realm, the sea of blood that seemed to be able to envelop the 1,000-bird realm had shrunk by a third. The sea of blood that disappeared naturally entered the giant spirit fiend's body and turned into the great demon god Grek. It was only a third of his power. Because the sea of blood was still outside, he could withdraw the power that had fused with the giant spirit fiend at any time and return to the outside world in an instant. Since Sabonis' true body has fully descended, I also have to show my sincerity. Grek, who had possessed the giant spirit fiend, grinned at the Shura of Gojosian on the golden chariot. I'll help you hold the line. You can do whatever you want. Chapter 1099. Inside the Fortress of Destruction, Yu Yuan's expression gradually calmed down. The strange light in his eyes quietly faded away. When he peered into the small world in his sea of consciousness, he clearly saw that his other self, which should have awakened from his main soul, was gradually forming an enormous illusory soul, hiding itself as the light faded away. It seemed that it had never shown any abnormalities. In the dark sky above the lair of death, beside the enormous golden war chariot, the dragon-slaying platform was suppressed by the power of the Shura of Gojosian Sabonis, and slowly sank again. No one could stop the dragon-slaying platform from entering the depths of the darkness. No one could get close to the Shura of Gojosian. However, at this moment, Yu Yuan noticed that the corner of Ghoul King Tiansong's mouth curled up into a strange smile. Yu Yuan went blank for a moment. He couldn't help but have a guess in his mind. The words Tiansong had brought had caused the light of his memories to explode. It had almost caused the other self in his main soul to awaken. Regardless of whether the other self had awakened or not, the messenger's goal had been achieved. Because of the strange movement of his soul and his unconscious muttering, the dragon-slaying platform had shaken and blocked the passageway that connected to the Dark Realm, leaving the Asuras alone. Sinton and the other Platinum Asuras couldn't stop the dragon-slaying platform from leaving. Once the dragon-slaying platform left and the passageway exploded, it would be impossible to save it. As a result, the Shura of Gojosian, whose true body was in the Dark Realm and silently watching the situation unfold, was forced to arrive in advance. With the power of his rank 10 bloodline, Sabonis grabbed the dragon-slaying platform and killed Fei Shui, who was a void spirit. With her blood as a primer, the situation that had gone out of control returned to the right path and continued on its original path. If President Li had brought out that golden throne earlier, he might have been able to stop the darkness from spreading. Ghostly flames of wisdom burned in the depths of Ghost King Chuling's eyes as he snorted. He was able to stop the darkness from spreading even after Sabonis, the Shura of Gojosian, arrived in that famous war chariot. How could he have stopped it earlier? Yu Yuan and Ziqing, Luo Yu, and the others trembled slightly upon hearing his words. That was right. Since President Li could do it now, before Sabonis personally arrived, as long as President Li released the golden throne refined by Hauran's first golden iron divine mountain and tampered with the great Tao of the Thousand Birds realm, he should have the ability to stop the spread of darkness, but he did not do so. Why? He's inviting you into his trap, waiting for Sabonis' arrival. Chen Qinghuang said in his usual indifferent and dignified voice from inside his fortress. He's not just inviting Sabonis, he may also invite the great demon god Grek, or even the Chaos Kuan wandering outside the realm. As soon as he said this, everyone in the Destruction Fortress fell silent. Everyone realized that the true plan of the Shunhun sect and the Tongtian Trading Company had just surfaced. Let me do it. The first foreign delegate of the Chamber of Commerce, Junchen, flashed and landed in front of Zhongli Dapan. His incomparably proud and aloof figure slowly expanded under everyone's gazes. Dazzling stars seemed to light up from the acupoints all over his body. Gradually, his 1,000-meter-tall Dharma form appeared. Dozens of acupoints in his body turned into clusters of stars that were as large as millstones. Zhongli Dapan, who had been injured by Grek's sneak attack, was as small as a grain of rice compared to Jun Chen's avatar. Zhongli Dapan looked up at Jun Chen, who was like a god, and was a bit surprised. After hesitating for a while, he nodded and said, "Be careful. Grek can inject his power from the outside world. What you're facing now is only 1/3 of his power. But maybe you'll have to bear all his power in the next second." Sabonis, the Shura of Gojoseon, controlled the realm wall of the 1,000 Birds realm. Of course, he would not stop Grek's blood chi. The power Grayson had placed in the outer realm could indeed be infused into this possessed giant spirit fiend in a single breath of time, allowing him to display his peak combat strength to the fullest. Zhongli Dapan was worried that Jun Chen would underestimate this great demon god, so he asked him to be careful. "I know." Jun Chen nodded slightly. His avatar that was thousands of meters tall made 9-star sage Beirut, Li Ao, who had a life altar, and many surviving star race clansmen gasp in amazement. That was because the clusters of stars on Jun Chen's avatar corresponded to the realms of the domain of annihilation. So this top foreign elder of the Tongtian Trading Company actually learned the most core secret incantations from the star sect. Luo Yu's face was filled with shock. Plus, he has refined many realms of the domain of annihilation in secret. He extracted the star cores of many stars and infused them into his acupoints to set up an unparalleled formation. And Ziqing's heart shook. He refined the stars in the sky. Yu Yuan also took a deep breath. At this moment, he thought of Yang Chuha of the Red Sun Empire, the new sect master of the 7 divine sects. That man had plundered 3 rivers of the Red Sun Empire and infused them into his meridians, allowing him to make rapid breakthroughs in his cultivation. As a result, the land of the Red Sun Empire would dry up for decades or even centuries. Many villages and towns would starve to death, and many people would starve to death. Yang Chuha's actions were viewed as evil, and his secret incantations were considered evil. But now Jun Chen, the white-robed flute player, had apparently taken a step further. He had refined the star cores of realms after leaving the starry river and fused them into his acupoints to form some kind of spell formation. He himself was the center of the spell formation, the eye of the spell formation. As for whether the realms of the domain of annihilation would explode into countless meteors, he clearly didn't care. From this point of view, Jun Chen was an outsider. No wonder the Star Moon sect had never told anyone about him. As for Jun Chen himself, he rarely showed his core secret incantations to others, not to mention his relationship with the Star Moon sect. Tian Tsang smiled. Without such means and power, how would he dare to challenge the grand demon god Grek head-on? Starshift. Jun Chen's Dharma idol that was 3,000 meters tall said softly, and the clusters of stars in its chest slowly changed positions. At the same time, many realms and continents in the Annihilation Star River started flying away without making a sound. It was much faster than ancient starships, divine weapons, or even God King's space-piercing spears. Because of this, Jun Chen's Dharma idol didn't pass through the realm barrier of the 1,000-bird realm. With the 2 of you in charge of the Tongtian Trading Company, no wonder the Shunhun sect approved of it. Garek, who had possessed the giant spirit monster, grinned and nodded. He couldn't help but praise. This vast world is indeed full of outstanding talent. You've comprehended the power of the stars in the universe. You're even more profound than the members of the Star Tribe. You're all mysterious and unpredictable. I have to admire you. Upon hearing these words, the expressions of Beirut, Leo, and the other star spirits grew unnatural. Every outsider expert in the Starry River knew that the Star-Moon sect's secret incantations were derived from the Star Spirit. The Star Spirits had spread them in order to help the humans rise to power and keep the dragons in check. However, Junchen, an outsider, had comprehended the Tao of the Starry River and refined the star cores of the myriad heavens for his own use. If a stubborn outsider like Junchen advanced to the nascent divinity stage, who knew how many stars in the Starry River would be destroyed by him? Junchen was basically a star behemoth in human form who could devour realms. His Tao and his deeds were exactly the same as those of the star behemoths from the primal chaos era. No wonder that Crane of Death was only a mount in front of him, and was loyal and fearful of him. They're really not afraid of breaking through the thousand-bird realm and destroying the domain of annihilation completely. Ghost Monarch Chuling shook her head and sighed. She looked at Chen Qinghuang, who had his back to everyone with the dim eyes of the flame of wisdom, as if she had a feeling that this mysterious empress must have her own plans and plans. That depends on what the Shenhun sect and the Tongtian Trading Company think, Chen Qinghuang said coldly. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Emperor Hantian, the heavenly devil Cyan Nightmare, and He Sun, the three powerful experts of the Shenhun sect, gathered near Tian Song from different directions. At this moment, Yu Yi, who had been kneeling for a long time, rose to her feet without saying a word. Are you all right? Yu Yuan asked in his mind at a frequency that was unique to the two of them. I'm fine. I just had a hallucination earlier. Yu Yi returned to the cauldron. When she spoke, her expression seemed a bit reserved, and she wasn't as carefree as before. When Emperor Hantian and He Sun looked at her, she actually retreated into the world inside the cauldron. Master Yu. Don't worry too much about Consort Han. She's just a powerful fiend devil. She's not worth your attention. Also, she's near the dragon beheading platform. I'm afraid that woman called Lin Zhuyun doesn't have the ability to refine her and use her as a vessel for her young spirit. Yu Yi continued to send messages from inside the cauldron. Yu Yuan felt that the soul of the cauldron had become a bit strange after refining her body. In the past, the soul of the cauldron had attached great importance to every fiend devil, let alone Consort Han, who had reached the peak of her transformation and gradually regained her memories. From what she had said, Consort Han and the other fiend devils had become insignificant. Not enough. This is not enough. It's far from enough. Shura of Gojoseon Sabonis shook his head. Seeing the dragon beheading platform sink into the depths of the darkness, he felt that his power had already suppressed the divine stone. Without any worries, he rode the golden chariot and ascended step by step into the sky. In an instant, he was on the same level as President Li's golden throne. He no longer relied on the darkness below. If it's just the two of you, you have no chance of winning. No matter what you have, no matter how many arrangements you have made, as long as you haven't stepped into the nascent soul realm, you will always die when facing me. Sabonis pointed a finger at the sky. In the land of thousand-bird realm, in the darkness, billions of golden light, silver lightning, and black iron essence turned into torrents and steel divine pillars that began to crash into President Li's golden throne. Under my feet, the world laws you have constructed are a joke. Chapter 1100. The giant throne under President Li cracked under the impact of Sabonis's powerful power. The bolts of golden divine lightning that coiled around the enormous golden throne like golden dragons couldn't withstand the impact of the divine steel column and were reduced to dust. Boom, boom, boom. The giant pillars made of gold, silver, iron and copper contained Sabonis's powerful energy and were controlled by Shura of Gojoseon. Their indestructible murderous aura seemed to be able to pierce through space and crush anything in the world. Looking at the thick pillars and feeling the terrifying power inside, the hearts of all the people in the thousand-bird realm trembled. Shura of Gojoseon, who was sitting on the golden chariot, pointed at the sky with one hand, then pressed both hands to the ground at the same time and raised them. Accompanied by rumbling that shook the heavens, numerous mountains and rivers that were rapidly piled up from crushed rocks were formed in an instant, and they instantly rose to a height of 300 m. The mountains were like sharp spears that pierced the sky, shining with a cold metallic luster. The laws of this realm seemed to be in Sabonis's hand and could be controlled at will. President Li's many arrangements became chaotic because of the mountains rising from the ground. The golden lightning around the golden throne he was sitting on was destroyed. The throne also shook violently and kept being hit by the steel pillars and kept rising into the sky. The throne was about to take President Li to break the realm wall of the thousand-bird realm and go deep into the outer space. Lead! Junchen, who had manifested his 1,000-meter-tall Dharma idol, uttered a word that was filled with profound mysteries in a deafening voice. Billions of miles away, the planets began to tremble and the mountains began to shake. The gold and iron ores seemed to be refined in an instant and condensed into the purest gold and iron flow. Jun Chun guided the gold and iron flow directly into the uncontrollable golden throne that was about to break the boundary wall in a way that even deities and ghosts couldn't predict. Everyone only saw that there seemed to be spots of starlight under the throne suddenly flashing. Then, they found that the surging gold and iron flow appeared under the golden throne. Not only did it immediately stabilize the throne, but it also gave President Li divine power. President Li, who was sitting upright, stood up and opened his arms, as if he was hugging the entire world. Endless gold and iron power poured into his body from the throne, making him like the Shura of Gojoseon and Sabonis, as if he was made of gold and was rising steadily. President Li also showed his majestic Dharma form because of this. His Dharma form wasn't a human shape, but a group of divine mountains that seemed to pierce into the boundless universe. Thousands of unimaginably tall mountains were hidden in a continuous mountain range. Gold, iron, copper, silver, and many rare metals were hidden among them, shining stars nearby. The aura of the origin of gold and iron seemed to come from the mountain range that seemed to be rooted in the depths of the universe. Driven by Sabonis' power, the mountains that rose from the ground in the thousand-bird realm suddenly collapsed, and huge pieces of stone rolled toward the darkness under Sabonis. For a moment, many Shura warriors were cursing. President Li and Jun Chen's cooperation is indeed unparalleled. Plus, the two of them have secretly set up everything in the Annihilation Starfield, and are willing to pay the price of destroying many planets in the Annihilation Starfield to fight Sabonis and Grek. Ghost King Chuling shook his head and sighed. His ghostly eyes glanced at Haesun, Heavenly Demon Green Nightmare, and Emperor Han Tian, who had quietly arrived. Then, he looked at Tian Song, who was standing on the blood spirit altar, and thought to himself, the 4 experts of the Shenhun sect in this world are surrounding the fortress of destruction. Are they secretly guarding Princess Qing Luan? Or are they protecting Yu Yuan? In case Yu Yuan is accidentally killed in this divine battle? The darkness continued to plague the rest of the thousand-bird realm. When the Shura of Gojoseon and Sabonis attacked President Li in the giant golden chariot, the absolute cold and darkness that had stopped spread again. The clansmen of various races, human cultivators, and great demons continued to fight the Een corpses and mutant monsters in the narrowing valley. Most of the weaker bloodlines and those who didn't have high status were killed by the Een corpses and mutant monsters. The Dark Realm Shura attacked the rank 9 bloodline leaders like Beirut and Mia from time to time. They didn't want to kill them immediately, but they wanted to keep them busy. Gradually, only 1/6 of the territory remained unswallowed by the darkness. While Sect Master Li and the Azura King Sabonis were fighting each other, Junchen, who was in charge of the Starry River, was clashing with Grand Devil God Garek, who was 1/3 of the Grand Devil God, using all kinds of incantations, blood magics and magical laws. Jun Chen, who had borrowed the power of many realms in the domain of annihilation, was evenly matched with Grek. At least, he didn't seem to be at a disadvantage. No matter what happened to the first guest elder of the Tongtian Trading Company, Jun Chen, through this battle, would become famous in the vast universe. The name of Jun Chen would also be known by all races, because his opponent was Grek, the great demon god. Even if he was only 1/3 of the great demon god, Jun Chen could still be proud of himself. Yu Yuan. Tian Tsang suddenly chuckled. Yu Yuan, who had been standing at the edge of the destructive fortress and observing the situation in the realm for a long time, turned to look at him and frowned. What do you want to say now? At this moment, Chen Qinghuang also looked at He Sun, Heavenly Demon Green Nightmare, and Heaven-Shaking Emperor, as if they were trying to figure out each other's intentions. She knew that the 4 experts of the Shenhun sect in the Thousand Birds realm had come to the destructive fortress together for either her or Yu Yuan. And so far, she hadn't shown any hostility to the Shenhun sect or the Chamber of Commerce. You still haven't sensed the aura of that divine sword? Tian Tsang smiled casually. As he spoke, he pointed at the depths of the darkness where the lair of death was. Since the Thousand Birds realm is connected to the Dark realm, and the cold energy of the Dark realm can pour in, shouldn't you try to sense the location of that divine sword? Yu Yuan was dazed. Then, he secretly communicated with the sword soul in his arm bone to sense the whereabouts of the divine sword, just as Tian Tsang had said. A moment later, he shook his head and said, "Endless darkness has devoured everything. My perception, soul awareness, and even the sword soul can't penetrate the darkness." That's true. Tian Tsang nodded with a smile. Your current cultivation base is indeed a bit lacking. Besides, you gave up on that shortcut, so. He looked down at a deep valley where many outsiders and Howren cultivators were fighting corpses and mutant demons to the death. That's why that person has prepared something for you in advance. As soon as he said this, a series of strange crackling sounds came from the depths of the valley, as if the ropes binding something that had been sealed for a long time had been cut. Yu Yuan shuddered. He looked at the valley, his eyes filled with disbelief. The corner of his mouth trembled. How is this possible? Wreathed in thick smoke, the soul-refining pool, which was releasing inky soul power, floated out of the depths of the valley and headed straight for Yu Yuan. The sword marks that had been erased from the soul-refining pool's walls appeared with great clarity once again. Please take a seat. Tian Tsang, He Sun, Green Nightmare, and Emperor Heaven-Shaking called out in unison. The 4 powerful experts of the Shenhun sect scattered to the 4 corners of the soul-refining pool. Tian Tsang shrank along with the blood spirit altar and bowed respectfully like the other 3 experts. At this moment, Chen Qinghuang, and Ziqing and Luo Yu, who were in the extermination fortress, weren't the only ones whose expressions flickered. Zhongli de Pan, Shen Feiqing, the Death Crane, Shi Quan, Beirut, Liu, and Canli also looked up at the changes in the sky with shocked expressions. They had exclaimed when the soul-refining pool had rushed out, and their gazes had been fixed on it the entire time. After all, many of them had seen the wonders of the soul-refining pool with their own eyes in the fallen moon Forbidden Land. They had also seen the soul-refining pool disappear into the realm passageway, and noticed that the walls of the soul-refining pool had become as smooth as a mirror. There were no longer any deep sword marks. The soul-refining pool's sudden appearance in the Thousand Birds realm and the obvious sword marks on its walls surprised them. The 4 powerful experts of the Shenhun sect were even more shocked when they saw the soul-refining pool fly straight for Yu Yuan and scatter to the 4 corners of the pool. They were all guessing what would happen next. Then, they saw the 4 powerful experts of the Shenhun sect greet Yu Yuan in unison and welcome him to his seat. Every intelligent being in the Thousand Birds realm was shaken to the core as they stared at the soul-refining pool and Yu Yuan. Even the battle between Shura of Gojoseon, Sabonis, the great demon god Grek, President Li, and Jun Chen was somewhat restrained. The four most ferocious existences in the Starry River also paid attention to the soul-refining pool as they fought. Yu Yuan, who was the center of attention, went blank. He looked at the familiar pool and didn't know what to do. Hei Sun, Emperor Heaven Shaking, and Green Nightmare bowed their heads in silence. Tian Song put away his mischievous smile and said with a serious face, "With it, the sword marks carved on the pool wall, the scabbard, the sword's soul, and your own strength, you should be able to sense the whereabouts of the divine sword, summon it from the depths of the dark realm, and bring it to the Thousand Birds realm. The heaven-piercing sword. Nie Qingtian's divine sword. I can't believe that the Divine Soul Sect is still plotting to seize that divine sword. The heaven-piercing sword is in the depths of the dark realm." A stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. The survivors of the races, the Azuras of the Dark Realm, and even Zhongli De and Lu Lu were all shocked. At this moment, Yu Yuan nodded slightly, took a big step forward, and went straight into the soul-refining pool. He was like a god king. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.